Chapter 1739. The moment he saw Tianyang's smiling face turn into Tianyang, Yi Chun spat out the wine that he had just drunk. You. Yi Chun looked at Tianyang in disbelief. You're Tianyang? However, before Yi Chun could react, Tianyang's face returned to its previous appearance. So, can you tell me more? For example, why is the immortal divine flame's fire seed different from yours? Also, why did you come to Ingtian City to participate in a martial Dao arena instead of running away from the arrest warrant of the immortal emperor's barren land branch? Hearing this, Yi Chun gritted his teeth and casually released a soundproof barrier. He still told him everything. Yi Chun's story was not long. Tianyang only listened for a few minutes before he got the gist of it. However, this was probably out of Tianyang's expectations. Yi Chun did not have a real name. His real name was Yi Chun. However, it was only because his father's surname was Yi, and his mother was from the Tian clan. However, all of this was destroyed 30 years ago. The Tian clan in the God Realm was actually much more dangerous than the Tian clan that was chased to the Tian Shao Great World. Although they were not weak, because they were in the God Realm, they were still too insignificant in front of the immortal emperor. Even if they hid in an incomparably desolate territory in the southern Central Hundred Territories, they were still discovered by the immortal emperor. They only sent a few advanced stage God stage cultivators to destroy Yi Chun's original family. His father died in battle, and his mother committed suicide. In the end, Yi Chun became the last person of the Tian clan. Yi Chun only knew that the other Tian clan members were still in the God Realm, but he did not know where they were. He had no choice but to escape and wander in the southern Central Hundred Territories. After obtaining a secret technique that could change his appearance and aura at will by chance, Yi Chun began his hunting journey. Yi Chun would never forget this blood feud. However, the immortal emperor's cultivators were too powerful. Yi Chun had been wandering in the southern Central Hundred Territories for more than 10 years and had obtained the title of Faceless and the first place of the True Dragon leaderboard. Even so, he did not dare to go against the immortal emperor immediately. It was not until not long ago that Yi Chun successfully broke through to mid-deity stage that he went to the weakest branch of the undead emperor's palace, the barren land branch, and made a big fuss. On the other hand, the immortal divine fire seed that was auctioned off at the Tianyang auction came from an immortal emperor court disciple that Yi Chun had killed. So, the reason you want to sell the undying divine flame seed is to lure the undying emperor Hall out? Tianyang was surprised. He was impressed by Yi Chun's courage. The undying divine flame could be said to be a sane item. Only those who weren't afraid of the undying imperial court would dare to buy it and refine it. As for Yi Chun, he took advantage of this and directly auctioned off the undying divine flame. As long as there was an unknown person who was extremely obsessed with the undying divine flame, it was almost certain that he was a disciple of the undying emperor court who wanted to retrieve the undying divine flame seed. Therefore, Yi Chun deliberately made a move to test the waters. When he found that Tianyang was extremely persistent, he immediately confirmed that Tianyang was a member of the undying emperor court. Therefore, before Tianyang could let down his guard, he directly made a move. In the end, he was defeated by Tianyang. Interesting. After listening to Yi Chun's story, Tianyang chuckled. Looks like our goals are similar. Tianyang was severely injured by the undying emperor. Or rather, he was killed by the undying emperor once. Emperor Kangwu, who was framed by the Qian clan of the undying emperor court, also died to save Tianyang. As for Yi Chun, other than himself, his entire family was slaughtered by the undying emperor court. The two of them had the same goal, which was the Qian clan of the undying emperor court. That's true. Yi Chun nodded. However, when he looked at Tianyang's eyes, he calmed down from his initial admiration. However, you didn't ruin my plan. Previously, when he saw that Tianyang was personally rewarded by the undying emperor court, he must have caused a huge loss to the undying emperor court. Now, it seemed that this might be true. However, this Tianyang was a little too gentle. Dealing with a colossus like the undying emperor court, being gentle was equivalent to death. It's fine. Tianyang smiled slightly. If you really fish out someone from the Undying Emperor Court, it's hard to say whether you can defeat him or not. Tianyang had seen the Undying Emperor Court's methods before. With just one undying Tai Shin palm, he almost destroyed the entire heavens and cliff. Not to mention, there were still the 5 heavenly venerable swords and the immortal burning sky seal. Tianyang was 100% sure that the 3 styles of indestructible were completely passed down in the Undying Emperor Court. When the Qian clan killed Emperor Cangwu, other than sacrificing a god venerable who struggled at death's door for hundreds of thousands of years, they did not suffer any great losses. All the ancient inheritances in the Undead Emperor Palace were also under the control of the Qin family. Tianyang now only had the immortal divine body and the 3 styles of indestructible. There was no inheritance related to the undying heavenly venerable. Although there were other strong points to make up for it, Tianyang did not think that Yi Chun would have so many trump cards. If he pulled out a mid-deity stage expert, Yi Chun might not be able to escape alive. Whether or not I can kill him is none of your business. Yi Chun said lightly, then stood up. Then let's talk here today. If it's as expected, on the day of the martial arts arena, the Undying Emperor Court will also appear. When the time comes, just wait and see. After saying that, Yi Chun's figure disappeared from the huge restaurant. Tianyang shrugged. This guy is asking for a beating. If he gets beaten up, don't bother about him. The demonized, vast expanse Holy Spirit said rudely. It was clearly beaten up by Tianyang before, but now it was so stubborn. It's okay. As long as no Emperor-level combat power appears, I can still protect myself. Tianyang chuckled. It's not easy to meet someone with the surname Tian. I can't give up so easily. Then, Tianyang also stood up and left the restaurant. However, the other people in the restaurant did not realize that one of the tables was already occupied. And the next day, Tianyang did not do anything to the undying divine flame that he bought. After all, it was not as strong as one that he casually separated. Instead, he waited quietly. 2 days later, after the auction ended, Ingtian City, which had fallen into a short period of peace, was surging again. The martial arts arena opened. End of chapter. Chapter 1740. The martial arts arena began. Almost instantly, the originally calm Ingtian City fell into a frenzy. It was the biggest martial arts event in the Barren Land, the martial arts competition that would determine the strongest prodigies of the younger generation. Unlike the Lingfeng Realm Sky Prides tournament, which took place in a small world, the martial arts arena in Ingtian City only had one arena. 2 peerless Sky Prides, who were rarely seen on normal days, were engaged in an extremely thrilling and exciting battle. For cultivators above the Saint Realm, the battle between the Saint Realm experts would undoubtedly be of great help to them. There were countless cultivators who broke through to the Saint Realm because of the battle between the prodigies in the martial arts arena. For cultivators below Wuzun, the martial arts arena was the strongest battle that they could see. It was extremely useful for broadening their horizons and strengthening their understanding of martial arts. For the participants, the Saint Emperors and Demigods, the martial arts arena was a great opportunity for them to stand out among the countless prodigies in the Barren Land and become the legendary lord of the Northern Thousand Territories, the outer sect disciple of the Undying Imperial Court. The Undying Imperial Court. These 4 words were enough to shock the entire divine world. Even though the Undying Imperial Court was no longer as glorious as it was in ancient times, it was still the absolute ruler of the northern divine world. In the Southern Hundred Territories, an imperial emperor could look down on the world. However, in the Undying Imperial Court, the imperial emperor was only a part of the top forces. The lord of the Undying Imperial Court was a legend in the hierarch realm since ancient times. Even if it was just an outer sect disciple, one would soar to the sky and become a top prodigy in the divine world. Did he tear down the City Lord Mansion? Looking at the martial arts arena that appeared out of nowhere in the center of Ingtian City, Tianyang was stunned. He knew that the Ingtian City placed great importance on the martial arts arena, but the City Lord was really a wolf. For the martial arts arena, he even tore down his own house. My father said that the city lord of Ingtian City is a man of great courage. For the martial arts arena, a mere city lord mansion is nothing to worry about. Lan Xinran smiled. Hearing this, Tianyang's mouth twitched slightly. In order to build a martial arts arena, he directly tore down his own city lord mansion. This courage was indeed great. It seems like it has already started. That's where the city lord is. Lan Xinran said excitedly. Now that the martial arts arena was about to begin, she was naturally excited as well. Although there were geniuses like Wang Feng and Yi Chun, Lan Xinran's ability was not outstanding. Even if she joined a martial arts ring, she might not get a good ranking. However, this did not stop her from being shocked by such a huge martial arts event. That's the city lord. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and looked at the ordinary-looking middle-aged man in an ordinary robe in the distance. Initially, he thought that Lin Fan was just an ordinary passerby. Who would have thought that Lin Fan was the city lord of Ingtian City? He carefully sensed his aura and realized that he was at the peak of the God Realm intermediate stage. He was only one step away from establishing his own small world and officially embarking on the path of becoming an imperial monarch. The city lord decides the ranking of the martial arts arena on the spot. Therefore, to participate in the martial arts arena, not only do you have to be given a slot by the various families, but you also have to be ranked by the city lord. Lan Xinran explained. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly. In a flash, he appeared in front of the city lord. Are you the little girl from the Lan family? When the ordinary-looking city lord saw Lan Xinran, the smile on his face instantly became amiable. This treatment made Wang Qingling, who had been treated coldly by the city lord, turn pale. Although the Wang family was not well liked due to their style of doing things, as the city lord, there was no need for him to be treated so differently. Greetings, city lord. Lan Xinran smiled and nodded. It seemed that the city lord's mansion and the Lan family had a good relationship. Since you're the little girl from the Lan family, I will give you a special privilege. You can fight with whoever you want. The city lord laughed loudly. Wang Feng and Wang Qingling's expressions became even more unsightly when they heard that. That's great. Lan Xinran naturally accepted the free gift. Then, she looked at Tianyang and asked, Who does Brother Su want to fight with? According to Lan Xinran's plan, Tianyang would defeat Wang Feng, who was currently the most powerful before the auction. With his strength, it did not matter who he fought with. Although there seemed to be a sneak attack on Tianyang when they were leaving the auction, Lan Xinran was very confident in Tianyang's strength. Then, how many people do I need to defeat if I want to be the champion? Tianyang pondered for a while and asked. Hearing this, Lan Xinran was stunned. Why did he ask this all of a sudden? There are about 500 people who are participating in the martial arts arena. They are all supreme talents from all over the Barren Land. If I don't lose a single round, I need to defeat at least 10 people. Are you trying to be the champion? You have guts. Hearing this, the city lord of Ingtian City laughed and said, Why don't I pick the strongest opponent for you first? It's okay. Tianyang smiled and said, Including that person, send as many people as you can. I'm in a hurry. I don't want to kill them one by one. I want to kill a group of them. Hurry up. Tianyang smiled and said. The city lord of Ingtian City was stunned. He scratched his ears to make sure that he did not hear wrongly. Wang Feng and Wang Qingling, who were standing at the side, narrowed their eyes and shouted angrily. Arrogant. Even an immortal state warrior would not dare to say that he could take on so many geniuses from the Barren Land alone. You're just a demigod. Do you think you can kill everyone by yourself? Do you really think that you're the number one on the True Dragon list? Immortal Sword Emperor Tianyang? Wang Feng sneered. The city lord of Ingtian City came back to his senses and his face darkened. Arrogant words. Let's talk about it after you get the number one position. The more arrogant you are now, the more painful it will be in the future. The city lord of Ingtian City scolded. Tianyang's face did not change. If there's no other way, let Wang Feng be the first one. How dare you? Wang Feng and Wang Qingling were not the only ones who were angry. Apart from Lan Xinran, more than 100 people were looking at Tianyang angrily. What did this guy think of them? who had come all the way to Incheon City to participate in the martial arts arena. They were all invincible geniuses in their respective places. One could imagine how arrogant they were. Now, there was a demonic cultivator who wanted him to take on so many geniuses by himself. I'll fight with you. Ridiculous. You don't know that I, the thunder god of war, have already killed your spiritual soul with my sword. Today, you won't be able to walk out of the martial arts arena. Suddenly, the crowd became excited and shouted angrily. However, Tianyong did not cower in the slightest. Instead, he chuckled softly. Look, so many people are willing to fight with me. The city lord of Incheon City did not expect Tianyong to be so arrogant. Even in front of him, who was at the peak of the middle stage of the godly state, Tianyong dared to be so overbearing. That's great. The city lord of Incheon City's face darkened. Then, those who want to fight with him, come to the martial arts arena. Boom, 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 boom. In an instant, more than 100 geniuses were standing in the martial arts arena. Everyone, including Wang Feng and Wang Qingling, was furious as they stared at Tianyong. Let them cooperate. Tianyong smiled. At this moment, Lan Xinran shuddered as she saw Tianyong walking towards the martial arts arena. Are you really going to fight? Can you defeat them? Lan Xinran asked worriedly. Tianyong, on the other hand, chuckled and waved his hand. Don't ask. If you ask, I'll kill them all. In a chapter 1741. Don't ask. If you do, I'll kill you instantly. Tianyong laughed. In the next moment, Tianyong arrived at the arena. Kill you instantly? Ridiculous. Wang Feng was the first to scoff. So what if you can fight one or two of them alone? There are countless geniuses from the barren land standing here. Each of them only needs one punch to blast you to smithereens. What right do you have to spout nonsense in this vast martial arts arena? Wang Feng said coldly. In the next moment, the countless geniuses behind him echoed his words and roared furiously. All of them were at the peak of the demigod realm. Countless forms of true origin condensed in the sky. There were so many geniuses at the peak of the demigod realm. Even if a true, godly state cultivator was here, he would only end up running away after being beaten by countless people. This is what you get for looking down on the heroes of the world. The surging pressure had already filled the entire martial arts arena. It was so oppressive that Lan Xinran could not breathe. Countless people in the audience were also shocked by the sudden appearance of this group of geniuses. After asking around a little, they heard the news about this matter. An unknown demonic cultivator wants to fight more than 100 geniuses alone. Instantly, the news spread like a storm in the martial arts arena. The entire martial arts arena was silent. Countless eyes were focused on Tianyong. Does this guy want to die? Someone said with a shocked expression. That was more than 100 geniuses, not 100 chickens. Just standing in front of these geniuses was enough to make a godly state cultivator tremble, let alone a mere demigod. Now, kneel down obediently and break your limbs. If you do, we can spare your life. Otherwise, each of us can make you die a horrible death with just one move. Wang Feng sneered. He could not defeat Tianyong alone. However, there were more than 100 geniuses here supporting him. Otherwise, I can kill all of you with one move each. Tianyong poked his face, tilted his head, and laughed. You're courting death. Hearing this, Wang Feng was instantly enraged. He had temporarily become the commander of so many geniuses. Attack! Boom, 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 boom. Countless geniuses, who could no longer hold back their anger, immediately attacked after the order was given. True essence condensed into a true dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, erupting with waves of dragon roars. A long sword shot out from the sky. It was surrounded by endless lightning, and its momentum was intimidating. Countless flames and polar ice turned the entire martial arts field into a world of ice and fire, plunging Tianyong into a boundless purgatory. At the same time, the air was filled with a strange smell. When that wisp of smoke came into contact with the ground, it corroded a huge hole. With so many geniuses here, if each of them made a move, it would be enough to frighten the entire barren land. It was overestimating the immortal realm to make them flee. At least a quarter of these people had the ability to exchange 3 moves with a deity realm expert. Today, you will definitely die. Seeing Tianyang still motionless in the face of so many attacks, Wang Feng suddenly grinned. Today, the shame left outside the auction house would be washed away with Tianyang's blood. Not bad. Tianyang looked at the countless attacks in front of him and nodded. Then, he blew a breath. Boom! The true dragon trembled and exploded into true essence fragments in an instant. The lightning on the long sword dimmed and directly lost all its power under this breath and fell to the ground. At this moment, the domain of ice and fire disappeared like a spring breeze melting snow. Everyone was directly blasted out of the martial arts arena. Bang, 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 bang. The sound of countless bodies hitting the wall rang out. More than 100 geniuses all collapsed to the ground and could no longer stand up in a short time. However, in addition to this wall, the tall outer wall of the martial arts field behind the wall was completely collapsed. Countless smoke and dust danced, covering the entire martial arts field. I told you, I'm in a hurry. Why would I waste time with you guys? Tianyang brushed the dust off his body and smiled. The breath turned into a stream of demonic qi and returned to Tianyang's body. Chaos was the origin of all skills. It was not difficult for him to simulate a mere demonic qi. Demonic qi? Seeing this, someone recognized the nature of the grayish-black qi and said in disbelief, demonic qi, that was exclusive to the demon race. No, this demonic cultivator can actually cultivate demonic qi. The Yingtian city governor looked at Tianyang's relaxed face and was shocked. Although demonic cultivators and the demon race both had a demon, they were completely different. One was a human and the other was a demon. Their cultivation methods were only slightly similar. To be able to cultivate the demonic qi of the demon race with the body of a human, this person's talent in the demonic Dao must be extremely terrifying. No wonder he dared to challenge so many people alone. The Yingtian city governor sighed. Thinking of his disdain for Tianyang's challenge of 100 people, he sighed again. He was getting old. Wow! Seeing Tianyang blow everyone away, Lan Xinran was shocked. What was this? This was probably the coolest way to defeat someone in an instant. It was effortless. No, it was effortless. He defeated everyone in an instant. No. Wang Feng, who was blown out of the ring, reacted and shouted, I don't accept this. I was careless just now and was hit by the demonic qi. Let's do it again. Wang Feng shouted. However, the Yingtian city governor's face turned cold. You have lost. You can go home now. 100 people challenged one person and you were defeated in an instant. You still want to do it again? Your skin is much thicker than this genius demonic cultivator. The Yingtian city governor said coldly. Hearing this, Wang Feng almost couldn't breathe. Indeed, this was a joke. He had made countless promises and thought that he would definitely defeat this demonic cultivator. In the end, he was blown out of the ring the moment he attacked. What was this? He was asking for humiliation? Now, he wanted to do it again, putting aside the fact that this was against the rules. The fact that he wanted to do it again was enough to destroy Wang Feng's image. Too powerful. On the other side, someone crawled up. The frustration on his face could be seen at a glance. Let's go. I didn't expect Yingtian City to have such a genius. In an instant, more than half of the geniuses left. The remaining geniuses also prepared to leave the martial arts arena. They didn't want to embarrass themselves in front of everyone. Wang Feng's face turned pale when he saw this. In comparison, it showed that he wasn't magnanimous. How could he be so unreasonable after being defeated in an instant? Tianyang had already walked down from the ring and stood in front of Lan Xinran. How did you do it? Hearing this, Tianyang laughed. Don't ask. If you do, you'll be defeated. End of chapter. Chapter 1742. No one expected that so many supreme talents would be blown away by a mouthful of demonic aura. In an instant, the 100 over supreme talents were blown out of the arena and lost instantly. Sigh, some of the geniuses who came from outside Ingtian City side and left the martial arts field. They had come all the way to Ingtian City just to participate in the martial arts field. In the end, they were blown away by a demonic cultivator who came out of nowhere. They didn't even get to fight a single round. Suddenly, there were no other participants in the arena except for Wang Feng and Wang Qingling. Wang Feng was stupefied as well. According to his thoughts, no matter how bad the situation was, there should be at least a few people remaining to support him. However, he and his sister were the only ones who stayed behind. However, Wang Feng didn't think clearly because he was too angry. However, the other geniuses who were blown away by Tianyang saw it clearly. They didn't believe that they were all knocked off the arena because of the sudden, huge impact. However, when the breath blew them away, it also extinguished countless of their attacks. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the combined attacks could severely injure a divine state warrior. In the end, all of their attacks were extinguished by Tianyang. What else could they do? If they stayed behind to cheer for Wang Feng and the demonic cultivator agreed, they would be beaten up again. It was humiliating enough for them to be defeated by a single person. If they stayed behind to be beaten up, they would be utterly humiliated. This guy's talent and strength are unparalleled. The mayor of Ingtian City exclaimed as he watched Tianyang leave. However, it didn't take long for the mayor of Ingtian City to come to his senses. Wait a minute. More than 100 people have been defeated. What should we do about the remaining martial arts fields? The mayor of Ingtian City wanted to cry. Previously, he only wanted to give Tianyang a try. Since he would definitely lose, he didn't think too much about it. However, he knew that this guy was very powerful. In an instant, he had defeated more than 100 people. Now, there were only about 300 martial arts arenas left. If he didn't give Tianyang first place, then Tianyang would do it again and provoke the remaining 300-plus people to attack together. This martial arts convention in the Barren Land was almost completely unplayable. Hurry up and discuss it. Give him first place and then scram. Otherwise, we'll be done for if all of them are insta-killed. The city lord of Ingtian City hurriedly used his movement technique and disappeared from the martial arts field. After that, the audience could only hear one voice. Today's participants were all defeated by a single person. Therefore, today's martial arts arena is over. The mayor of Ingtian City left, leaving behind tens of thousands of confused spectators. What happened to the promised martial arts arena? You can go back first. I have something to do here. Tianyang suddenly said while walking on the road. All right. Lan Xinran was stunned for a moment before she nodded. After Lan Xinran left, Tianyang smiled at the side. Why didn't you prepare for tomorrow's martial arts arena? Why did you come here to look for me? Tianyang chuckled. Beside him, there was a slight distortion in space. Then, a young man in a black robe walked out. Yi Chun. The current Yi Chun seemed to have fixed his appearance in order to participate in the martial arts arena. Otherwise, he would not be able to participate even if he had a different face every day. Tianyang was also curious about Yi Chun's secret technique. After all, if not for the chaos holy rule, even his astral body could not see through it. Even Tianyang's chaos holy rule could not directly see through the disguise of this secret technique. He could only see a little of the original appearance. I defeated more than 100 geniuses in one go and forced the city lord of Ingtian City to end today's martial arts arena early. What else do I have to prepare? Yichen said calmly. However, as he spoke, there were some changes in his expression. Although it was not much different from the original, some slight changes in the facial features were enough to make a person look completely different. If things go as expected and you continue to fight hundreds of people, whether it's the city lord of Ingtian City or the people of the undead emperor, they will definitely not let it happen. So, you have more than a 70% chance of directly becoming the champion of this martial arts arena. At that time, you can sneak into the undead emperor, Yi Chun said. He seemed to have confirmed that Tianyang's motive for participating in this martial arts arena was not pure. Well, as long as he asked Tianji, he would be able to find out about Tianyang's battle record in the 100 territories of the South Central, except for the Cloudfire territory, Emperor Qing's secret treasure, and the few battles where Tianyang killed him. Through this information, Yi Chun could naturally conclude that Tianyang was from the Tian clan. It was just that he could not be sure what kind of person he was. What about you? You won't go back directly, will you? Tianyang chuckled. Hearing this, Yi Chun's expression did not change. Where can I go back to? The headquarters of the Undead Emperor is in the center of the 1,000 territories of the Northern Celestial Realm, in the Imperial Territory. Although you're stronger than me, your understanding of the Undead Emperor Palace is far inferior to mine. After becoming the champion, you can go there alone. It's normal for you to bring 1 or 2 servants with you. Yi Chun said. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. You want to be my servant and sneak in? Although Tianyang did not have much contact with Yi Chun, he could still see that Yi Chun was a proud person. Although sneaking in as a servant was also a method, most prideful people wouldn't do such a thing. Of course, for Tianyang, there was no psychological pressure. However, Yi Chun did not look like such a person. There is only one thing I want to do now, and that is to do my best to attack the Undead Emperor. Yi Chun's eyes burned with hatred. So, as long as I can make trouble for the Undead Emperor, what method can I use? It's just an identity, so what's the harm in temporarily? However, I don't know why you're going to the Undead Emperor. Yi Chun was puzzled. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled faintly. To kill the Undead Emperor, do you believe it? No, I don't. Yi Chun said straightforwardly. Let's not talk about how the Immortal Prince is the #1 genius in the God Realm. His ability has long reached the Emperor stage. Although you can defeat me, you're definitely not a match for the Emperor stage. Besides, even if you have any methods before you get close to the Undead Emperor, you will be seen through immediately. At that time, before you even see the Undead Emperor, you'll be killed by the powerhouses of the Undead Emperor. What's the point of talking then? Yi Chun said. Then, his figure gradually became blurry. According to the information given to me by Wentian Ji, the Undead Emperor has indeed sent people to Ingtian City. I will go back and find out how strong they are, so that it will be convenient for you. Then, Yi Chun's figure completely disappeared. As Yi Chun used his movement technique and burst out with extreme speed, Tianyang's astral body also lost its lock on Yi Chun. Looking at the direction that Yi Chun left in, Tianyang shook his head. His astral body sensed that there was no emperor in Ingtian City. Since it was not an emperor, no matter how many people the Undead Emperor sent, he would directly kill them. This Yi Chun was still a little stubborn. However, it seems like the Undying Prince's death is coming soon. Tianyang stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. The corner of his mouth curled up into a strange smile. A bloody light flashed from his eyes. It did not extinguish for a long time. End of chapter. Chapter 1743. The next day, before Tianyang arrived at the arena, someone rushed over from the arena and informed Tianyang in advance. Lord Su Tianxiao. Tianyang had a strange expression on his face as he looked at the stammering and awkward guard in front of him. Did Yi Chun really get it right? Because your performance yesterday was too outstanding, it led to the city lord is not very willing to let you fight again. The city lord's mansion guard said. Tianyang's expression became even stranger when he heard that. Do you mean that I'll automatically be last? The city lord's mansion guard in front of him was obviously still a young man. He had never encountered such an unbelievable situation, so he spoke intermittently and was embarrassed to say it out loud. No. Tianyang's words clearly frightened the city lord's mansion guard. He hurriedly shook his head and said, after a day of discussion, the city lord and the immortal emperor have decided that because you're too strong, if you continue to participate in the battle, you might cause more than 100 people to leave at the same time. Therefore, it's best if you don't fight anymore. What? Brother Su was kicked out because he's too strong? Hearing this, Lan Xinran, who walked out from the side, widened her eyes and looked at the city lord's mansion guard. No. The city lord's mansion guard hurriedly shook his head. It's just that they gave Lord Su Tianxiao a ranking. The lowest is the top 3. If you can pass the test, you'll be first. The city lord's mansion guard said. Tianyang raised his brows when he heard that. This solution was simple and fast. Wow. Lan Xinran, who was at the side, was shocked. He had killed 100 people in an instant, and now he was told that he could get into the top 3? Why didn't such a good thing happen to her? Wait a minute. Killing 100 people in an instant did not seem feasible for other cultivators apart from Tianyang. If it was Lan Xinran, she would have been killed in an instant. Test. Compared to Lan Xinran's shock, Tianyang was more interested in the test. Who were they looking for? You? Tianyang said with a smile. Hearing this, the guards of the city lord's mansion adjusted themselves a little. That's not it. His Excellency from the undead Imperial Palace is very interested in you. The test is to fight against him. However, the details of the test are still unclear, so please come to the city lord's mansion for a chat. The guards of the city lord manor respectfully replied. Being able to attract the attention of the legendary Undying Emperor Hall, his strength was definitely extraordinary. Although he did not see the scene of Tianyang killing more than 100 barren land geniuses in one breath, he could be sure. This person called Su Tianxiao in front of him was abnormally powerful. Undying Imperial Court? Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows, and his eyes revealed a look of interest. It wasn't difficult for a deity realm powerhouse to block divine soul probing. Tianyang could only sense that there was no Emperor realm existence in Yingtian City that could threaten him. However, he did not sense the aura of the immortal bloodline. Who would have thought that someone from the Undying Emperor Hall would really come to Yingtian City? Wow, Undying Emperor Hall. Hearing this, Lan Xinran's eyes widened, and she was shocked. Is it a branch of the Undying Emperor Hall or the main branch? It's an excellency from the main branch of the Imperial Court. Speaking of this, the guards of the city lord manor became even more respectful. In the immemorial era, the realm of the Undying Emperor Hall was not called the Imperial Court realm, but another ordinary name. However, from the immemorial era until now, the Undying Emperor Hall had always been in charge of that realm, so it was renamed the Imperial Court realm, using the power of a faction to change the name of a realm. In the entire world, only the Undying Emperor Hall could do this. The main branch of the Imperial Court realm? Hearing this, Tianyang's lips curled up. If it was the main branch, then it would be even more advantageous. After passing the test, he could directly go to the Undying Emperor Hall. All right now. Yes. Beside the martial arts field, in the newly built city, Lord Manor. I didn't expect that there would be such a person in this small, barren land. Haishun, are you joking? A middle-aged man in a golden robe, with a dignified face and white hair, looked at the city lord of Yingtian City indifferently. Although his forehead was full of wrinkles, his eyes were extremely sharp. With one look, one could tell that he wasn't an ordinary person. There were some pitch-black flames burning on his body. This person was from the Undying Emperor Hall, a late God Realm expert, Qianzhong Yuan. Of course, and he didn't defeat them. He killed them instantly. He destroyed the attacks of countless geniuses with a mouthful of demonic qi and blew them off the stage. Apart from the stage, there wasn't a single scratch. The city lord of Yingtian City said excitedly, I'm afraid that there aren't many geniuses like him in the Undying Emperor Hall. No matter how strong he is, he's just a demigod. There are many demigods in the Undying Emperor Hall who can fight against gods. Qianzhongyan casually drank a mouthful of tea and said indifferently, Don't use your shallow knowledge to guess the master of 1,000 territories, the Undying Emperor Hall. Hearing this, the city lord of Yingtian City's expression changed slightly, and cold sweat broke out on his back. The reputation of the Undying Emperor Hall was known throughout the divine world. Casually guessing the people of the Undying Emperor Hall would not end well. The dignity of the Undying Emperor Hall was not to be sullied by anyone. However, seeing that you and I are friends, I won't mention it. It's just that he's a demonic cultivator, which is a little troublesome. Qianzhong Yuan said coldly, but he didn't take him seriously. After all, he was just a demigod. City Lord, Su Tianxiao is here. At this moment, a loud shout came from outside the door. The City Lord Manor, which was a little stiff because of Qianzhong Yuan's words, suddenly became lively. Let the geniuses of the barren land in. The City Lord of Yingtian City smiled and looked at Qianzhong Yuan. He won't let you down. At this moment, the door was pushed open, and Tianyang walked in. At first glance, he saw the person from the undying Emperor Hall, who was sitting at the head of the table. Even the city lord of Ingtian City could only serve as a foil. Late-stage God Realm. Tianyang saw through this person's cultivation with a glance. With Tianyang's current strength, he could kill this person in less than 3 moves. Of course, it was better to keep a low profile. Just as Tianyang was sizing up Qian Zhongyuan, Qian Zhongyuan's sharp eyes also looked at Tianyang. Then, he frowned slightly, and the undying god flame on his body burned. "You're just a demigod. Why don't you kneel when you see me?" Qian Zhongyuan's arrogant and cold voice sounded. At the next moment, the pressure of a late-stage god realm exploded. Instantly, it filled the entire city Lord Manor. End of chapter. Chapter 1744. Why aren't you kneeling when you see me? Qian Zhongyuan was still sitting on the main seat, but his sharp eyes were already looking at Tianyang. An imposing aura burst out from Qian Zhongyuan's body. This was the undying Emperor Court. This was the late-stage god realm Qian Zhongyuan. Seeing this, even the city lord of Ingtian City couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. It was indeed different to have the undying Emperor Court as a backer. Although his cultivation was at the peak of the late stage of the God Realm, which was a level higher than Qian Zhongyuan's late stage of the God Realm, he was still inferior to Qian Zhongyuan. After all, the undying Emperor Court behind Qian Zhongyuan wasn't an existence that he could provoke. "You're Su Tianxiao." Seeing Tianyang standing still, Qian Zhongyuan raised his eyebrows and revealed a trace of surprise. In order to show the strength of the undying Emperor Court and his nobility, Qian Zhongyuan released his aura that wasn't any weaker than a mid-stage God Realm expert. Any demigod, even if they were talented and could fight against a God Realm expert, would only be able to deal with an early-stage God Realm expert. To a mid-stage God Realm expert, all demigods were like ants that couldn't withstand a single blow. As a demigod, Su Tianxiao's cultivation wasn't particularly strong. How did he manage to block Qian Zhongyuan's aura? Seeing Tianyang's expression as if nothing had happened, Qian Zhongyuan sneered in disdain. Tianyang was indeed putting up a strong front. As a demigod, it was impossible for him to be so calm in the face of a God Realm expert's aura. One had to know that when Qian Zhongyuan faced the undying Emperor Court, he was forced to kneel down, and even then, he was still trembling. This was the reaction of a demigod in the face of a late-stage God Realm expert. "Oomph." Qian Zhongyuan snorted and slapped the armrest. Bang! Suddenly, the city lord of Ingtian City was shocked. Wasn't Su Tianxiao doing well in the face of a God Realm expert's aura? Why was Qian Zhongyuan so angry now? "You're just a demigod. How can you be so calm in the face of a mid-stage God Realm expert? Do you know that deceiving the undying Emperor Court is a capital offense?" Qian Zhongyuan said coldly. Hearing this, Tianyang, who didn't have much of a reaction from the beginning, was stunned. In his impression, this kind of test was very likely to be an expert releasing pressure to see if you could withstand it. If he could withstand it, he would have passed. Hence, Tianyang didn't care about the content of the test at all. He was sizing up the people from the undying Imperial Court. When the pressure descended, Tianyang didn't even react. He thought that it hadn't started yet. Even when it started, Tianyang didn't react much. After all, Tianyang's expression didn't change in the face of a monarch's pressure. A mere mid-stage god's pressure wasn't even comparable to Tian's. But what was with this reply? "Do you really think that I don't know how powerful a demigod is?" Seeing that Tianyang had no reaction, Qian Zhongyuan was even more furious. He slammed the armrest again. Bang! Boom! The surging god's late-stage god's pressure pressed down on Tianyang fiercely this time. In an instant, the calm city lord's mansion was set off a wave of god's power that blasted towards Tianyang. This time, it was the real god's late stage. Qian Zhongyuan released his full strength. "Zhongyuan, what are you doing?" Sensing the strength of the pressure this time, the city lord of Ingtian City's face changed instantly. With his cultivation, he naturally noticed the strength of the pressure. It was definitely Qian Zhongyuan's full strength. This level of explosion, even a god's late-stage god might not be able to withstand it, let alone a demigod. However, Tianyang's face still didn't change. "You're destroying my barren land's genius." The city lord of Ingtian's city roared. Then, a powerful god's late-stage god's power erupted. The two forces collided with each other. In an instant, the entire city lord's mansion trembled. This was the collision between two gods' realm experts. Since you have a strength to defeat so many barren land geniuses in one move, why do you have to resist my pressure? Qian Zhongyuan sneered. Demonic cultivator? I'm afraid you're a demonic cultivator who is good at using demonic weapons. You mean Su Tianxiao is faking it? Hearing this, the city lord of Ingtian City's face sank slightly and said with an unfriendly expression, "This was not a good guess." That's natural. After discovering that the entire city lord's mansion, except for the place where a few people were standing and sitting, was completely destroyed by the collision of the two forces, Qian Zhongyuan also withdrew his pressure. If it's not because of using some demonic weapon, otherwise, how can there be such a performance? In the face of the god's late-stage god's pressure, he's still so calm. How can he be a demigod? Qian Zhongyuan said coldly. Hearing this, the city lord of Ingtian City was stunned. What was this? Su Tianxiao was strong, but he couldn't block it? Even when I was a demigod, I was far from being able to do it. He's just a demonic cultivator in the barren land. How can he do it? Qian Zhongyuan said proudly as if he was narrating some truth. Ha yawn. At this moment, an untimely yawn sounded. Tianyang rubbed his eyes, tilted his head, and looked at the guard who brought him to the city lord's mansion. You brought me here to watch a frog at the bottom of a well jump here. Hearing this, the guard was stunned. It seemed that he did not expect that in front of the god's late-stage god realm expert for the undead imperial court, Tianyang's first sentence would be this. That, Lord Su Tianxiao. Looking at Qian Zhongyuan, whose face instantly became extremely ugly after this sentence, the city lord's mansion guard's face turned pale with fright. What's wrong? Isn't it just a frog at the bottom of a well in front of you? If you can't do it, you think others can't do it. Why are you shouting there? Tianyang chuckled. Hearing this, the city lord's mansion guard was completely speechless. At this moment, Qian Zhongyuan finally couldn't help but roar. How dare you? In the next moment, the surging divine power broke through the city lord's obstruction and rushed fiercely toward Tianyang. Tianyang's expression did not change at all. He smiled coldly and waved his right hand. Boom! Layers of demonic chi directly rolled up the divine power and turned it toward the sky. At this moment, Tianyang's aura was no longer that of a demigod, but of a god realm expert. God realm. Seeing this, the city lord's pupils contracted. This guy disguises cultivation, but why, as a god's late-stage god realm expert, couldn't see through the disguise of a god's late-stage god realm expert? I said you're a frog at the bottom of a well. Is there a problem? Tianyang's expression changed slightly as he said lightly. Qian Zhongyuan? At the same time, an immortal flame burned. Its momentum was monstrous. In a chapter 1745, rolling immortal divine flames burned on Tianyang's body. It even swept up streams of demonic energy and directly shattered the entire city lord's mansion. At the same time, a demonic aura erupted in all directions with Tianyang as the center. However, in the middle of the demonic energy, there was an immortal divine flame burning. It looked extremely strange. Seeing this, Qian Zhongyuan's expression changed drastically as he looked at the pitch-black flames in front of him in disbelief. Immortal divine flame? How could you have the immortal divine flame? Qian Zhongyuan said in disbelief. As a member of the immortal emperor court, he could naturally tell at a glance that this was definitely the purest immortal divine flame. However, Su Tianxiao was clearly just a small demonic cultivator in the barren land. How could he have the immortal divine flame? As for the immortal divine flame fire seed that was auctioned earlier, Qian Zhongyan only thought about it for a moment before rejecting it. If it was a fire seed, no matter what, it would not be able to achieve such power. Look directly at me, Tianyong said coldly. Hearing this, Qian Zhongyuan subconsciously raised his head and looked at Tianyong. The moment he saw Tianyong's face, his heart skipped a beat, and he was so shocked that his liver and gallbladder were torn apart. Immortal? Immortal Emperor? Hearing this, Tianyong snorted coldly again. Are you sure? Tianyong's current appearance was based on the Immortal Emperor's divine power avatar. However, Tianyong had made a lot of adjustments in the details, causing him to look almost identical to the Immortal Emperor at first glance. However, upon closer inspection, there were many differences. Thank you for the free information. If it were not for him, Tianyong would not have known that the Immortal Emperor had all kinds of relatives for him to impersonate. He would have killed Qian Zhongyuan the moment he started talking nonsense. Not the Immortal Emperor? Hearing this, Qian Zhongyuan was stunned. Then he reacted. This face did indeed look very similar to the Immortal Emperor. However, there were still many differences. Could it be the Undying Prince's relative? Qian Zhongyuan said respectfully. In an instant, he changed from his previous arrogant and insufferably arrogant attitude to his current attitude of speaking with his head lowered. As the #1 genius of the divine world, the Undying Prince's position in the Undying Emperor Palace was incomparably high. As his relative, his status naturally wasn't something that an ordinary late-stage God Realm cultivator like him could compare to. Tianyong just snorted, neither admitting nor denying it. However, this light snort was enough to make Qian Zhongyuan think of many things. Then, I wonder what your excellency has come to this little barren land for? Qian Zhongyuan said respectfully. Hearing this, Tianyong said lightly. Because I heard that the fire seed of the undying divine flame was being auctioned here, and I happened to be training nearby. So, I hurried over to see who was so presumptuous to actually dare to auction the fire seed of my undying bloodline. However, I couldn't find it, so I went to the martial arts arena you set up to play. Now that I've met you, you're trying to intimidate me? Tianyong said coldly. He had imitated the Undying Prince's temperament of looking down on everyone. Hearing this, Qian Zhongyuan instantly trembled. It was very reasonable for him to rush over for the fire seed of the undying divine flame, and Qian Zhongyuan didn't suspect anything. Or rather, Qian Zhongyuan didn't dare to suspect anything from the beginning. Now, because of Tianyong's words, he was completely terrified. The person in front of him was the relative of the Undying Prince. Previously, he said that this person was using a treasure to cheat, and he even wanted to kill him. In the Undying Emperor Palace, it was a sin that could cause one's soul to be destroyed. Instantly, Qian Zhongyuan trembled to the extreme. He lowered his head, not daring to look at Tianyong. He was afraid that the other party would kill him in a fit of anger. If the relative of the Undying Prince wanted to kill a mere late-stage God Realm cultivator like him, he didn't even need to inform the elders of the Undying Emperor Palace. In Ingtian City, he could kill him at will, and he couldn't resist at all. Otherwise, he would be regarded as a traitor. Becoming a traitor was a crime that was countless times crueler than death. Seeing that you still have some strength, I won't kill you, Tianyong said indifferently. After all, this guy didn't seem to have seen any relatives other than the Undying Prince. He wasn't afraid of being exposed if he pretended to be one. However, Tianyong was go to the Undying Emperor Palace, and he would definitely be investigated by the Undying Emperor Palace. At that time, his disguise would most likely be useless. He still needed Qian Zhongyuan to cover for him. After arriving at the Undying Emperor Palace, Tianyong would be able to do whatever he wanted. Thank you for your mercy, sir. Qian Zhongyuan seemed to be in disbelief. He actually escaped from a calamity just like that? However, Tianyong's next sentence made him come back to his senses. However, I will be returning to the Undying Emperor Palace tomorrow. You shouldn't stay in this barren land. Follow me back to the Undying Emperor Palace, Tianyong said indifferently. Qian Zhongyuan smiled bitterly. As expected, The hierarchy in the Undying Emperor Palace was extremely strict. It wasn't something a late God Realm expert like him could shake. Right now, he could only struggle at death's door for a little longer. Of course, Qian Zhongyuan didn't despair. After all, since Tianyang didn't kill him on the spot, it meant that Tianyang wasn't extremely angry. As long as he could return to the Undying Emperor Palace, he would have lived half of his life. Right now, the most important thing was to curry favor with the Undying Emperor Palace's relatives. Sir, the Emperor Palace is very far away from here. There might be various dangerous people there. If you go back alone, not only will it take a lot of time, it will also be dangerous. Why don't you let me bring you back? I have a special flying artifact here. We can quickly return to the Undying Emperor Palace. Qian Zhongyuan said respectfully. Hearing this, Tianyang's expression didn't change. He nodded slightly. Then, let's do as you say. You should know that I'm not asking you to come back with me to accept your death. After that, Tianyang withdrew the demonic qi and undying god flames around him and left with a flick of his sleeve. Qianzheng, who was in the city lord's manor, heaved a sigh of relief as if he had been pardoned. That person is, right now, even the city lord of Yingtian City didn't dare to casually call Tianyang. He could only refer to him as that person. You can't ask. Qian Zhongyuan's expression turned cold. That person's status is extremely high. He's not someone you can afford to offend. I'll return tomorrow. You can hold the remaining battles on your own. After that, Qian Zhongyuan disappeared in a flash. In a chapter. Chapter 1746. From the very beginning, Heavenly Sun did not plan to sneak into the immortal emperor's court as Yichun envisioned. He was different from Yichun, who only wanted to cause as much damage as possible, so he needed to stay in the immortal empire for a long time. This time, Tianyang only had one goal, to kill the immortal emperor. Then, he would leave with one strike and continue to cultivate elsewhere. Tianyang did not think that his current cultivation base, which could barely be considered an ordinary emperor, could compete with a colossus like the immortal empire that had existed since ancient times. Even if goddess Xue broke through to the divine venerable stage that she dreamed of, she might not be able to do it. Sneak in safely, and then spend a few decades to assassinate them? Tianyang would not do such a rookie act. If he wanted to kill, he would do it in an instant. Therefore, from the very beginning, Tianyang did not plan to keep a low profile. After Yichun told him this information that might not be important to him, Tianyang decided on this plan. He would suppress Qian Zhongyuan and head to the immortal empire with a higher status than Qian Zhongyuan. Tianyang was still thinking about the plan after that. However, the first half of the plan was executed perfectly. You're leaving tomorrow? Hearing this, Lan Xinran's eyes widened in disbelief. So soon? I thought I would have to finish all the martial arts arenas. Lan Xinran sighed and said, although they had not been together for long, she already had a good impression of this powerful and good-natured demonic cultivator that she met outside Yingtian City. Now that she heard that Tianyang was leaving, she was naturally extremely disappointed. There's no banquet in the world that doesn't end. Let go. Looking at the girl in front of him who had a disappointed expression on her face, Tianyang immediately smiled and said, however, I have something for you. Tianyang chuckled and took out a ball of light that was sealed by divine power from a space bag. This ball of light is easy to open, but you can open it after I leave the day after tomorrow. Tianyang smiled. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared from the Lan family. However, Lan Xinran had a strange expression on her face as she held the ball of light. This is a token of love. Hey, your wife is using your first-person perspective to see you flirt with a girl. How can you be so brazen? As expected, the moment Tianyang returned to his room, the voice of the demonized vast expanse Holy Spirit rang out. It's just a gift. I've disturbed her a lot these few days. If it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't contact the Undying Emperor dynasty, said Lin Fan. Tianyang, on the other hand, was baffled. Then he noticed Ling Yuhan's dissatisfaction in the Vientiane sky market and smiled. I just had too many spoils of war and didn't know where to send them. This was taken from the space bag of the black-clothed old man from the archaic Jiang family. Take whatever you want. What's mine is yours, Tianyang said with a smile. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan, who was still throwing a tantrum just now, immediately turned red. No, no, it's all Xiao Hei's fault. Then, she ran into the Heaven Tower, not even daring to look at Tianyang. Didn't you say that I'm the invincible, demonized, vast expanse, Holy Spirit? Why are you calling me Xiao Hei again? Hearing the two words, Xiao Hei, the demonized, vast expanse, Holy Spirit was enraged. However, Tianyang did not have the time to care about the few people in the chaotic small world. Instead, he snapped back to reality. How did you do it? Looking at Tianyang's smiling face, Yi Chun had an indescribable feeling. Although Yi Chun had been paying attention to Tianyang since a few years ago, when the Undying Emperor dynasty first put Tianyang on the wanted list. Although he did not receive any news after leaving the Southern Hundred Territories, Yi Chun still had his own judgment of Tianyang's strength based on what he had heard recently. He was at the peak of Celestial Stage. It was impossible for him to be at the peak of Celestial Stage. After all, no matter how strong one's talent was, it was impossible to cross such a huge gap to fight against the enemy. However, since they met, he had spent billions of Reiki, killed more than 100 prodigies in one move, and confronted the people of the Undying Emperor dynasty head-on. No matter how he looked at it, it did not seem like something a peak beginner god stage could do. Luck. Tianyang did not intend to explain anything to Yi Chun, who was still a little wary of him. Instead, he chuckled. Now you have two choices. One is to go to the Undying Emperor dynasty as a genius I found in the Barren Land. The other is not to come with me and continue to wait for a good opportunity. This time, I don't plan to stay for too long. If you go with me, you won't stay for too long either. Otherwise, you'll be killed. Tianyang smiled, talking about life and death as if it was an ordinary conversation. You don't plan to stay for too long? Then what are you going to do? Steal secrets? Secrets? Something like that. Only then did Tianyang remember that he had another mission in the Undying Emperor's palace other than killing the Undying Prince. It was to find the complete inheritance of the Tian clan in the Undying Emperor dynasty through the last clue left behind by Emperor Cangwu before he died. However, it was almost impossible for Tianyang to achieve the latter before he had enough status. Tianyang didn't have much hope for it either. If that's the case, it's not impossible. If you want to leave, let me know in advance. Yi Chun pondered for a while and muttered to himself. He was just a mid-stage god stage cultivator. Even if he entered the headquarters of the Undying Emperor dynasty, he could only wait for an opportunity. If Tianyang succeeded in stealing the secrets, then he would be much stronger than him. Hurting the Undying Emperor dynasty was revenge. In order to take revenge, Yi Chun was basically fearless. Then, okay. Tianyang smiled. Then, his face changed, and he disguised himself as a relative of the Undying Prince. As for Yi Chun, he followed beside Tianyang. The next day, outside Yingtian City, a huge dragon slowly circled and finally landed. Qian Zhong'en came in front of Tianyang respectfully and said, "This is the relic I refined. This is the relic that I've tamed. It was originally a shuttle, but I've refined a true dragon's spirit into it. Now, it won't even take a month to travel from the Barren Land to the Imperial Court." Okay. Tianyang nodded and then stepped on the dragon. The dragon sensed that someone had boarded it and immediately roared. However, Tianyang's eyes narrowed and released a pressure. The unruly dragon instantly became obedient. Seeing this, Qian Zhongyuan's pupil shrank. He was very clear about the character of his treasured artifact. This person actually suppressed it in an instant. Then, Qian Zhongyuan quickly adjusted his expression and smiled respectfully. Then, next we will go to the Imperial Court. End of chapter. Chapter 1747. Divine World, North Imperial Court. The ruler of the 1,000 territories in the north, recognized by countless forces in the divine world. The Undying Imperial Court was located here. Emperor's Highness, you broke through again? In the Undying Imperial Court, in the highest level cultivation secret realm. This was a secret realm created by the Undying Imperial Court for the Undying Emperor's Highness. Spiritual Mountain immortal platform, heavenly lake, immortal mist. Originally, this place was one of the few ancient ruins of the undying imperial court. Now, for the undying Emperor's Highness, it was transformed into a secret realm. It's not considered a breakthrough. A calm voice appeared, as a handsome young man with an extraordinary aura rose from the heavenly lake. The surrounding heaven and earth spirit chi surged and turned into a spirit chi storm that swept across the entire secret realm. I'm still a step away from the Imperial Emperor realm. It seems like cultivating in seclusion won't be able to take that step, said the immortal prince indifferently. Then he waved his right hand, and the storm of spiritual chi that had been created because of him standing up calmed down. He's about to reach the Imperial Emperor realm? The servant beside him widened his eyes in disbelief. Emperor's Highness, you're only 300 years old this year, right? If I count the spiritual embryo, I'm 378 years old. The undying emperor waved his hand, and a long robe appeared on his body. Before he was born, he was blessed by the heavens and earth, and he started cultivating when he was still in the spiritual embryo realm. When he was born, he was already in the origin transformation realm. Within a year, he broke through the Tao fire realm, spiritual sea realm, and connecting heaven realm. When he was 12 years old, he was already at the peak of the connecting heaven realm. In order to prevent his foundation from being unstable, he sealed himself for 50 years. After breaking the seal, he awakened the undying bloodline, the 9 dragons, 9 marks divine bloodline. After that, he cultivated like a hot knife through butter. When he was 100 years old, he stepped into the divine realm. However, because he didn't fight to the death, the divine bloodline couldn't give the undying emperor's divine bloodline to him directly. Thus, he fixed his cultivation and went to the dangerous places in the divine world to train. Today, he was only one battle away from becoming an imperial emperor. Inside, he was the strongest genius of the undying imperial court in millions of years. In the outside world, they were supreme geniuses who had suppressed the ancient times. Then what about Tianyang, whom I personally put a bounty on? How is he now? Said the immortal prince indifferently. His eyes were filled with a sharp light. In his 300 years of cultivation, Tianyang was the first person he had dealt with more than twice without success. The undying prince had a premonition that Tianyang might be his opportunity to break through to the imperial emperor realm. I don't know. After the secret treasure of Emperor Qing in the southern 100 territories, he went to Haomen. As for where he went after that, I don't know. The attendant at the side shook his head and said. At the same time, he did not dare to look at the undying prince. As he cultivated his godly pulse and godly body, the undying prince's appearance became more and more handsome. He did not look like a human at all. Even the male servants did not dare to look at the undying prince. Don't know. Hearing this, the undying prince's expression changed slightly, and he calmly asked, "Are you sure?" Although the undying imperial court's intelligence network was not as big as Tianji's, in a small place like the South Central 100 territories, it was not much weaker than Tianji's. But now the undying imperial court did not know. However, after Tianyang's whereabouts were lost, the snow god's lineage in the snow heavenly realm of the 100 territories of the South Central experienced a great change. The snow god, who was at the peak of the emperor realm, was seriously injured and fell into a deep sleep. The entire snow god's lineage was divided between the immemorial Jiang family and the Dragon Hall. Now, because of the territory left behind by the snow god's lineage, there are still many conflicts. After thinking for a while, the attendant decided to tell the truth about his conjecture. However, no matter how strong the undying imperial court's intelligence network was, the South Central 100 territories was still the territory of the immemorial Jiang family and the Dragon Palace. Their guess about Tianyang's whereabouts was of utmost importance. They would not easily leak it out. Of course, if they analyzed the recent changes in Jiang Xian's position, they might be able to find some clues. However, the undying imperial court was a transcendent power. Why would they care about a power struggle between imperial emperors? You mean to say that the Heavenly Son has something to do with the fact that the peak sovereign emperor is seriously injured and in a deep slumber, and such a huge force being divided by the other two forces? Asked the undying prince indifferently. The attendant hastily shook his head and said in fear and trepidation, "No, no." Even though the undying prince didn't sound like he was questioning Li Qiye, his words clearly expressed his attitude towards Li Qiye. Tianyang just broke through to the God realm recently. He won't be able to break through again in a short period of time. According to the information we received, his strongest battle record was defeating a late God realm expert. He's already on par with me, said the undying prince indifferently. However, even if his talent is on par with mine, he's only a few decades old. A few decades is enough to widen the gap, and it'll only get bigger. Moreover, he's just someone with the same bloodline density as the undying imperial court, said the undying prince before disappearing into the heavenly lake. There were many things he needed to do other than cultivating. However, it did not affect him at all. The 9 dragons' 9 runes, supreme divine veins, the immortal divine body, and the highest concentration of the immortal bloodline in millions of years. The immortal prince was destined to inherit the immortal imperial family's legacy and become a supreme god. Therefore, he needed to take control of the undying imperial court in advance. His words were extremely calm from the beginning to the end. There was no praise or criticism. He was just stating a fact that he was stronger than Tianyang. Yes, the attendant nodded, but did not follow him. His accusation was merely to serve the undying prince in the cultivation mystic realm. Just as the undying prince finished cultivating and was discussing Tianyang. As the topic of discussion, Tianyang sat on Qian Zhongyuan's Jiao Dragon and arrived at the imperial court realm. It was known as the Eternal Divine Court, a force that spanned over 300 million miles, spanning from the heavens to the Yellow Springs. It had presided over the god realm since ancient times and was known as the Eternal Court. This was the imperial court realm of the undying imperial court. Lord, do you want to take a look around the imperial court realm or return to the imperial court directly? Qian Zhongyuan said respectfully. Tianyang chuckled when he finished looking at the imperial court realm. Let's go to the undying imperial court. End of chapter. Chapter 1748. The undead imperial court wasn't located in a small world. Instead, it was located in the god realm. Unlike the snow god's bloodline, the undying emperor court was truly located in the divine world. Tianyang didn't sense any world ripples with his world energy. In other words, the possibility of suddenly turning the surrounding world into one's own world while fighting did not exist. When Tianyang fought the snow goddess, he had to use a large amount of world energy to break out of the snow goddess world, because he was trapped in the snow goddess world. However, due to the huge consumption of world energy, he didn't succeed in killing the snow goddess with the ultimate venerable stage ice law. Otherwise, Emperor Cangwu wouldn't have to make a move. This time, Tianyang was on guard against this. It's been a long time, and it's changed again. There weren't any cities around the undead imperial court. Or rather, the undead imperial court itself was a huge city with a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. At the center was the headquarters of the undead imperial court. Tianyang only used his astral body to sense roughly, and he could feel that there were more than 100 divine stage auras hidden in the center of the undead imperial court. Even the auras of sovereign emperors could be vaguely sensed, at least 3 of them. There was also an extremely terrifying aura hidden in the depths. Tianyang wasn't even sure if that person existed. No wonder the snow goddess didn't dare to fight the undead imperial court, even if she successfully broke through to the divine venerable stage. Return to the imperial court first. Hearing this, Qian Zhongyuan's face turned pale. Looking at Qian Zhongyuan's expression, Tianyang immediately understood what he was thinking. I'm not going back to punish you, Tianyang said calmly. With your identity, do you need me to go back? On the side, the corner of Yi Chen's mouth twitched. How could Tianyang be so confident in his disguise? Wasn't he afraid that this late-stage god realm, undying emperor palace would see through his disguise and kill him? This was no longer Ingtian City, but the imperial court realm. Yes. Hearing this, Qian Zhengyuan's expression changed slightly as he replied respectfully. Your flood dragon is not bad. Its speed is not bad. Therefore, I'll let bygones be bygones, Tianyang said. At the same time, he flipped through the map of the undead imperial court that he had obtained when he obtained Emperor Tsang Wu's essence blood. This map was already from hundreds of millions of years ago, but the undying emperor court didn't change much. Take this barren land genius back to the imperial court. I'll leave first, Tianyang said lightly. Then, he disappeared from the dragon in a flash. Remember, don't play any tricks. Otherwise, I can let you go now, but I can also kill you. Yes, sir, Qian Zhengyuan said with his head lowered. Tianyang had already disappeared from his sight. Subsequently, he scoffed as he looked at Yi Chun, who was silent. What kind of genius can there be in the barren land? Don't think that you're strong enough just because you've caught the eye of the undying prince's relative. In fact, in the undying imperial court, you're nothing. As soon as Tianyang left, the arrogance in Qian Zhengyuan's heart appeared again. However, Yi Chun had already heard about Qian Zhengyuan's character from Tianyang. He closed his eyes and said nothing. Qian Zhengyuan's expression turned extremely terrible when he saw Yi Chun being so calm and not listening to him at all. It was fine that the undying prince's relative ignored him. After all, the other party's status was extraordinary. However, who was this guy from the barren land? How dare he treat him like this? Don't forget my lord's words, Yi Chun said lightly when he saw that Qian Zhengyuan was about to attack. Right now, he could fight with this late-stage immortal state expert. However, now that he had entered the undying imperial court, it wasn't good to cause trouble. Hearing Yi Chun mention Tianyang, Qian Zhengyuan's expression instantly turned ugly. However, he couldn't refute it. Now that you're in the inner court, behave. Otherwise, don't blame me if you're killed by the other disciples of the undying imperial court. Then, Qian Zhengyuan urged the dragon to fly toward the undying imperial court. Tianyang stood in front of a huge mountain. Looking at the scene before him, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. According to the last memory left by Emperor Tsang Wu, this was the place where the complete inheritance of the Tian bloodline was stored. However, the undying heavenly lord, the place of worship? Tianyang looked at the undying heavenly lord statue that was exactly the same as the one he saw in the ruins of God. It was just as grand and majestic as the one he saw in the ruins of God. The corner of his mouth twitched. He had obtained the 3 styles of indestructible from the undying heavenly lord statue in the ruins of God. Even now, the 3 styles of indestructible were still very powerful. Therefore, it was reasonable for Emperor Tsang Wu to place the complete inheritance of the Tian bloodline in the undying heavenly lord statue. However, hundreds of millions of years later, the Tian bloodline would have declined long ago. The main bloodline would have been chased into a small world like the Tian Shao Great World and become a declining mortal clan. The location of the statue was very strange. If it was some mysterious cave in the depths of a mountain, Tianyang might be able to obtain it. However, in the ruins of God, Tianyang only had to move a little to attract countless people from the undying imperial court. Right now, there were several God Realm guards in charge of guarding the undying heavenly lord statue. They were looking at him with unfriendly gazes. If he continued to take a step forward, perhaps they would attack. Forget it. Tianyang suddenly smiled faintly and muttered to himself. I originally thought that I could obtain it directly. That way, I could complete both missions. Now, it seems like I should complete the main mission first. Tianyang chuckled. On the side, the God Realm guards of the undying imperial court who were in charge of guarding the statue had strange expressions. Who are you? What do you want? These God Realm guards were not like Qian Zhengyuan. They were only at the early stage of the God Realm. It was normal that they had never seen someone like the undying prince. Thus, they would not change their attitude because of Tianyang's disguise. Where is the undying prince's cultivation place? Tianyang smiled and asked, Undying prince? His Highness? The godly realm guard was stunned when he heard that. He then pointed at the floating mountain in the sky. There seemed to be some kind of spatial barrier on it. When Tianyang had just reached the imperial court, he could not see it. Now, he could see it clearly. Why are you asking about the undying prince's cultivation place? After subconsciously pointing it out, the god realm guard's expression changed, and he hurriedly asked. However, Tianyang's figure had already disappeared. He left behind a clear shout. 3 days later, let's fight to the death. I, Tianyang, will help the undying imperial court kill the undying prince. A declaration of war. End of chapter. Chapter 1749. In 3 days, we'll fight to the death. This was another reason why Tianyang came here. Tianyang wanted to end the battle quickly, so he naturally did not have that much time to waste in the Immortal Emperor Court. There was no lack of experts in the Immortal Emperor Court. Although Tianyang could sense that the emperors in the Immortal Emperor Court were not as powerful as the Snow Goddess. However, there might be someone who was proficient in the power of the soul and ocular techniques that could see through Tianyang's disguise. Moreover, there's also a godly venerable level superexistence. Tianyang had some confidence in dealing with an emperor. However, against a godly venerable, he had taken the wrong path. He could not even defeat the Snow Goddess, who was thousands of miles away from a godly venerable. Moreover, a godly venerable was an existence that had completely surpassed the emperor level. This, under the effect of Tianyang's divine power, this challenge was repeated more than 3 times. Moreover, the entire Immortal Emperor Court could hear it clearly. The few godly stage guards guarding the immortal heavenly venerable statue were completely shocked when they heard this. Someone actually dared to provoke the Immortal Emperor? Sending a challenge to the Immortal Emperor? Wasn't this courting death? Hurry up and report it to the Lord. Immediately, the few godly stage guards looked at each other and hurriedly took out their communication tokens to send the message to the Immortal Emperor Court's higher-ups. Relying on the aura that he had left on Yi Chen in advance, Tianyang easily arrived at Yi Chen's current residence. You're so arrogant. Tianyang's chaos divine power was enough to spread throughout the entire Immortal Emperor Court. Yi Chen looked at the calm Tianyang in front of him. Now, even he could not help but be dumbfounded. So, this was what Tianyang meant when he said that he would not be able to stay in the Immortal Emperor Court for long. As soon as he arrived, he sent a challenge to the Immortal Emperor Court. They would fight to the death in 3 days. How could he stay for such a long time? You actually came back alive? Yi Chen looked at Tianyang in front of him and finally said this. He had not been idle before and had investigated the recent situation of the Immortal Emperor Court. To have a sentry every 3 steps and a sentry every 10 steps was already an understatement. Almost every inch of the ground was being scanned by the astral body of a powerhouse. Yi Chen even felt that there were people constantly monitoring the intersect cave abode. Tianyang had issued such a violent challenge, yet no one had noticed? Of course, Tianyang chuckled. Tianyang didn't just randomly pick a place to issue a challenge. In order to maintain the tranquility of the immortal heavenly venerate statue, there were only a few immortal state guards monitoring the surroundings. Tianyang could kill those divine realm warriors in 1 move. After saying that, he immediately used the boundless secret technique, and no one would be able to find him. Tianyang naturally had his own considerations when he issued the challenge. With the undying prince's arrogance, it was impossible for him not to come when he was challenged, especially by an old enemy. Similarly, the undying prince would not allow anyone to interfere in this fair and square battle. Therefore, Tianyang was taking advantage of the situation. Borrowing the undying prince's power, he forced the undying emperor to not make a move. In this way, Tianyang would have no chance of being killed by countless powerhouses of the undying emperor's court. Of course, Tianyang did not tell Yi Chen about this. However, you're doing well. You're willing to stay in the intersect of the undying emperor's court for 3 days? Tianyang chuckled. Hearing this, Yi Chen's face turned solemn. in order to destroy the undying emperor's court as soon as possible. As long as I can play a role, I can stay for even a second. Moreover, even if you won't plot for a long time, I won't stay here for too long. Cultivating in the undying emperor's court is a favor to me. If I continue to deal with them, it won't be reasonable, so I'm naturally willing to leave. Yichen said. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly. Since that was the case, there was no need to worry. Next, it was within these 3 days he would properly deal with the undying emperor's court. Tianyang. When the undying emperor heard the challenge, his slightly squinted eyes instantly opened. A flash of light burst out from his deep black pupils. At the side, the elder who was silently watching the undying emperor's court suddenly spoke. How dare you provoke the undying emperor's court? Emperor's son, kill him immediately. In an instant, an extremely powerful emperor's aura burst out. The scepter in his hand paused, and the surrounding space seemed to freeze. He was the fourth of the 5 emperors of the undying emperor's court, known as the Wild Tiger Emperor. Waves of killing intent were released from the Wild Tiger Emperor's body. As long as the undying emperor nodded, he would immediately attack and kill Tianyang. No. However, to the Wild Tiger Emperor's surprise, the undying emperor shook his head lightly, and a flash of battle intent flashed in his eyes. In the surroundings, waves of undying divine fire burned. But the strange thing was that the scrolls did not show any signs of burning. Seeing this, the Wild Tiger Emperor's pupils constricted slightly. The undying divine fire could be said to have natural high temperature and destructive power. Even they could only restrain the destructive power of the undying divine fire from being released. Why did the undying emperor's undying divine fire give him the feeling that it was not destructive at all? The current me has already taken the first step to becoming a supreme god, the undying emperor said indifferently. The supreme god Tao is to create one's own laws. Now that my undying divine fire has surpassed the mortal realm, I can control it as I wish. Then, the undying divine fire changed again. A part of it ignited the useless scrolls. The other part retained the characteristic of not having any destructive power. Seeing this, the Wild Tiger Emperor's hands trembled slightly. The undying emperor's technique had already surpassed the last 3 of the 5 emperors of the undying emperor's court, including himself. This level of understanding of the Tao. Was he really someone who was not even 500 years old? If I become an emperor, my undying divine fire will also transform. The undying emperor said again. With a wave of his hand, the countless undying divine fire disappeared as if they had never existed. At that time, my path to becoming a supreme god will be even smoother. The undying emperor's forehead flashed, and a projection appeared in front of him. This was the memory of the battle between his divine power clone and Tianyang. At that time, he was only a peak heavenly great saint, but he was able to injure my divine power clone. Now he has stepped into the divine world and came to the undying emperor's court. With this speed of improvement, he is worthy of being my opponent. The undying emperor said indifferently, I'm only 1 step away from becoming an emperor. Hearing this, the Wild Tiger Emperor was so excited that tears almost filled his eyes. Even the current supreme god of the undying emperor's court had only become an emperor when he was a few thousand years old. The final battle with Tianyang is very important, so I will not allow you to interfere. 3 days later, I will use Tianyang's blood to complete my path to becoming an emperor. Chapter 1750. The Undying Emperor Palace was a city. Tianyang's godly energy was coincidentally not controlled properly. Apart from the Undying Emperor Palace, there was still a portion of it that was transmitted to the cities outside. In an instant, the news of Tianyang, who was wanted by the Undying Emperor Palace for many years, suddenly appearing in the Undying Emperor Palace and challenging the Undying Emperor Palace to a duel 3 days later, spread through the entire Undying Emperor city. Did you know? Tianyang, who was wanted by the Undying Emperor Palace for many years without any results, has appeared in the Undying Emperor Palace. The news spread like a storm, and in the blink of an eye, It had spread through the streets of the undying Emperor's city. Tianyang. Hearing this, someone exclaimed in shock. Is it really that Tianyang? Of course. The person who heard the news was clearly incomparably excited. It said that only those around the undying Emperor Palace can hear it. In other words, the voice came from the undying Emperor Palace. So, if it's not Tianyang, could it be that the undying Emperor Palace is putting on a show? That Tianyang is so strong? The undying Emperor Palace is known as the #1 genius of the divine world. The #1 genius of a northern divine world is more or less the same. The undying Emperor Palace isn't the strongest power in the divine world. How could there be a true #1 genius in the divine world? This Tianyang, maybe he's a young man from deep in the mountains who rose rapidly and has the strength to fight against the undying Emperor Palace. 3 days later, there will be a good show. In the streets of the undying Emperor city, there were countless similar discussions. In a small alley, at the location of when Tianyang, challenging the undying Emperor Palace, the young man wearing Wen Tianji's signature white robe raised his eyebrows. Interesting, there's no such person in the Tian clan of the divine world. Could it be that he left the divine world a few 100 million years ago? The young man in white robe laughed lightly. That's interesting. This Tianyang's rise is terrifying even in the divine world, but in a secondary world, it's really strange. The great calamity is coming. Could it be? At this point, the white-robed young man suddenly stopped talking, as if he was talking about some ancient taboo. 3 days later, the news had already spread throughout the undying Emperor city and undying Emperor city. The higher-ups of the undying Emperor's palace didn't pursue Tianyang under the orders of the undying prince. However, the monitoring of the undying Emperor Palace was much more intense. The report of the guards also reached the ears of the upper echelons of the undying Imperial Hall. However, no matter how long they searched around the immortal heavenly venerate statue, they couldn't find any clues. Even when Emperor Wild Tiger took action, he only discovered a slight change in space. As for the direction of this change, he was unable to find it. If they want to find Tianyang, they would need the help of the top 2 sovereign emperors. It was a pity that the first 2 imperial emperors were still outside the imperial court realm and couldn't return. He's just a clown who escaped with a single strike. There's no need for you all to search for him. He will definitely appear today, the undying prince said indifferently. In these 3 days, he had given up on dealing with the matters of the undying Emperor Palace and focused on preparing for the final battle. Let's set the location at the sky capital peak, the undying prince said. Balls of undying divine fire were already burning around him. Those who were familiar with the undying prince would know that the undying prince had already ignited his battle intent. Usually, when this happened, the undying prince would challenge the strongest prodigy of the past, or an older generation senior who was even stronger than the undying prince himself. However, Tianyang was only at the peak of the early stage god realm. Compared to the undying prince, who was at the half-step sovereign emperor realm, the difference was like heaven and earth. Sky capital peak. Hearing this, an elder from the undying Emperor Palace exclaimed. The last time the sky capital peak was used it was the undying prince's young master who challenged the previous generation's strongest prodigy, Yan Wujin. In the end, the undying prince won. Emperor Huanghu said and looked at the undying prince. Prince, you're just a peak early-stage god realm cultivator from small world. Is there a need to activate the sky capital peak? Ordinary people wouldn't have much of a reaction when they heard the name of the sky capital peak. They would just think that it was an ordinary name. However, the members of the undying imperial court had heard of the sky capital peak's name. In other words, the entire divine world would have heard of it. Imperial Peak. It was said that during the immemorial era, the undying heavenly lord and another immemorial emperor had fought and sunk mountains and rivers. Other than the imperial peak, the land within 100 million miles had sunk. Instead of saying that the imperial peak was a mountain, it would be more accurate to say that the land within 100 million miles around the imperial peak was a basin. The significance of the imperial peak to the undying emperor palace was no less than the undying emperor city to to the Undying Emperor Palace. Such a place would only be opened when an incomparably grand ceremony or a martial arts competition of great significance was held. However, the elders of the Undying Emperor Palace were also doubtful of this point. What did Tianyong do to allow him to enter the sky capital peak that was equivalent to the sacred ground of the Undying Emperor Palace? Based on my current authority, I don't need your permission to open the sky capital peak. The Undying Prince said faintly. His words were filled with unquestionable dominance. This was the Undying Prince's character. Once he had decided on something, he would never change his mind. All right, then we'll go and prepare now. After the Undying Prince finished his sentence, the elders who were against the idea immediately shut their mouths. In the Undying Emperor Palace, the Undying Prince was the one who had the most authority after the 5 imperial emperors and the hierarch emperor. Currently, 2 of the 5 imperial emperors were outside, and the hierarch emperor was in seclusion. The Undying Prince was naturally the strongest existence. Once the Undying Prince made a decision, he wouldn't change it. After all the elders left, the Undying Prince's eyes flickered as he looked into the distance. I wonder how I can kill Tianyong. Early morning, the Undying Prince had chosen the sky capital peak of the Undying Emperor Palace. The news had spread across the entire Undying Emperor city. At the same time, the Undying Emperor Palace struck while the iron was hot. Since they had chosen the sky capital peak, they didn't care how many people went and opened the legendary Imperial Peak. Their intention was clear. They wanted everyone in the Undying Emperor city to witness the battle of the Undying Prince. They wanted everyone to know how strong the Undying Prince was. At the same time, at the foot of the sky capital peak, a young man raised his head and looked at the countless experts who had been waiting for a long time. He smiled lightly. He stepped onto the steps that led to the peak. Undying Emperor Palace, Tianyong is here. Chapter 1751. Sky Capital Peak. It was 10 million miles tall, 990,000 steps tall. Originally, it was just a piece of flat land that had survived the battle between the Undying Heavenly Lord and an immemorial emperor. Ever since the Sky Capital Peak was formed, the Undying Emperor Court had regarded it as a holy land. Today was not only the battle between the Undying Prince and Tianyong, it was also the opening day of the Sky Capital Peak that had never been opened to the public. Just the second was enough to attract countless people, not to mention the battle between the Undying Prince and Tianyong. The name Heavenly Sun was a household name in the entire God realm, even if it wasn't as well known as a thunderclap. He was the only person that the Undying Emperor Court had not been able to kill even after several years of issuing an arrest warrant. He had appeared in the Undying Emperor Court and was going to fight the Undying Prince at the Sky Capital Peak. It was as if everyone was coming. Someone is coming from the foot of the mountain. Those who could step onto the Sky Capital Peak were all experts above the Heavenly Emperor realm. Even if they were at the peak, they could still see the commotion at the foot of the mountain. A young man in a black robe with a pitch-black longsword on his back appeared. He ignored everyone and stepped onto the first step of the 990,000 steps. That's Tianyong. Why does he look even younger than the one on the arrest warrant? Seeing Tianyong's face, someone immediately exclaimed. In their eyes, no matter how young Tianyong was, he should be at the same age as the Undying Prince. The Undying Prince was about 400 years old, and he was already a half-step immortal emperor. Tianyong might be 600 or 700 years old. However, Tianyong did not use the primal chaos godly law to conceal his life aura. His life aura that was less than 100 years old was directly exposed to the senses of countless experts. Less than 100 years old? How is that possible? Instantly, an elder of the Undying Emperor Court exclaimed. They only knew that the Undying Prince had once condensed a divine clone and went to the lower realm to deal with Tianyong. At that time, Tianyong was only at the peak of the Heaven Great Sage realm. Now, Tianyong's cultivation base. He was at the peak of the early stage immortal realm. What kind of speed is this? Even Emperor Wild Tiger was moved. Although the Undying Prince had sealed himself for 50 years and sealed his cultivation for 100 years, he was still in the immortal state. However, it hadn't even been 10 years since the prince had sent his clone to the great arcane world. In less than 10 years, he had advanced from the pinnacle of the heaven great sage realm to the deity realm. His speed was even faster than the undying prince. How can there be a genius stronger than the crown prince in this world? The undying Emperor Hall's elder exclaimed in shock. At this time, Tianyong had already ascended the sky capital peak one step at a time. Those who were not strong enough to see Tianyong also saw Tianyong now. Everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at Tianyong's excessively young face, unable to speak for a long time. Tianyong, on the other hand, was still smiling as he slowly ascended. However, some people noticed the steps that Tianyong had taken. In the center of every step, there was a faint pitch-black footprint. Burning above, it was the undying divine flame. Immortal fire? Could it be? Suddenly, some people's pupils shrank as they thought of a secret. Tianyong's speed didn't seem fast, but in a few breaths' time, he reached the 100,000th step. At the 100,000th step, Tianyong suddenly realized that the 990,000th step of the sky capital peak actually had a powerful aura. However, Tianyong sensed that it was only at the 100,000th step that Tianyong could sense. At the peak of the sky capital peak, Emperor Wild Tiger raised an eyebrow when he saw Tianyong suddenly stop in his tracks. He said coldly, "It's just 100,000th step, and you can't take it?" 100,000th step is just the aura of an early stage immortal state. If you can't take it, you're courting death by coming to the undying Emperor Hall. Emperor Wild Tiger said disdainfully. From the beginning, he had never taken Tianyong seriously. Compared to the so-called geniuses of the secondary worlds, Emperor Wild Tiger believed that the undying Emperor Hall was the strongest genius in the universe. If it wasn't for Tianyong's strange methods that caused the undying Emperor Hall to put up a bounty for him for so long, he would have died a long time ago. Now that he came to the undying Emperor Hall to challenge the undying Emperor Hall, it was the biggest joke in the world. "No," the undying Emperor Hall said. "He's moving." Moreover, he was even faster than before. Although his movements were still the same, it was obvious that Tianyong's speed had increased. In just a few minutes, he had already reached the 200,000th step. The strength of his aura had already reached the mid-stage of the immortal state. If Tianyong can't even reach the peak of the sky capital peak, he's not worthy to be my opponent, the undying Emperor Hall said indifferently. Hearing this, the elders at the side nodded slightly. However, even if Tianyong managed to reach the peak, it only proves that he's strong. The previous strongest genius of the divine world, Yan Wujin, directly reached the peak of the sky capital peak. This Tianyong is still taking one step at a time. It's obvious that he's not strong enough. Emperor Hall, you defeated Yan Wujin the last time. This Tianyong isn't as strong as Yan Wujin. It's a waste to show off like this, Emperor Wild Tiger said indifferently. The undying Emperor Hall shook his head. I don't think so. At this time, Tianyong had already reached the 300,000th step. His aura had already reached the peak of the mid-stage of the immortal state. At the 500,000th step, his aura reached the late stage of the immortal state. At the 900,000th step, his aura reached the peak of the late stage of the immortal state. Thus, the first 100,000 steps were filled with people. The higher the steps, the fewer people there were. In the end, only the people from the undying Emperor Hall were left. Although the sacred mountain was open to the public, the undying Emperor Hall was still unwilling to let others step on the peak. Can Tianyong win? At the side, the voice of the heavens expanse Saint Spirit rang out. The vast expanse Saint Spirit had witnessed Tianyong being killed by the undying Emperor Hall with her own eyes. Therefore, when the battle between Tianyong and the undying Emperor Hall began, the vast expanse Saint Spirit immediately rushed to the undying Emperor Hall. Even the restored Emperor-level weapon was brought along by the vast expanse shrine. If Tianyong was in danger, the vast expanse shrine will be able to block a few Emperor-level attacks and bring Tianyong away. Of course, no matter how strong the undying Emperor Hall is, can he be stronger than Goddess Shui? Tianyong, even injured goddess Shui. The vast expanse, Saint Spirit said casually. However, they did not realize that there were a few familiar faces below. Yichun, who had changed his appearance, Jiang Xian, little dragon god, and many others. 3 days was more than enough for them to come. At this time, the sun hung high in the sky. Tianyang had stepped onto the 900,000th step and reached the peak. Behind him, the 900,000th pitch-black footprints formed a straight line from the beginning to the end without any deviation. Clusters of undying divine flames burned brightly. I have to respect the undying Heavenly Lord. That's why I walked up one step at a time. Tianyang chuckled softly. Now the Tian clan is back to collect the debt. Chapter 1752. My Tian clan is here to collect the debt. Tianyang smiled as the black sword behind him shot into the sky. Then, it turned into a terrifying sword light that shot down from the sky. Boom! On the ground of Capital Sky Peak, an inverted black long sword suddenly appeared. It was so fast that even the elders of the Undying Emperor Palace couldn't react in time. How dare you! Monarch Wild Tiger was the first to react as he snapped furiously. How dare he be so arrogant in front of so many elders of the Undying Emperor Palace? However, in the next moment, Wild Tiger Emperor reacted. The Tian clan, Wild Tiger Emperor's pupils contracted as he looked at Tianyang in disbelief. Everyone in the upper echelon of the Undying Emperor Palace knew about the Tian clan. The Undying Heavenly Sovereign surname was Tian. To put it bluntly, the Qin clan was trying to usurp the throne. Hasn't the Tian clan already been exterminated? Why is there still in another great world? Monarch Wild Tiger immediately reacted. His eyes were burning with murderous intent. Oh! At this moment, the Undying Prince spoke. I know about the Tian clan. However, that great world shouldn't be where the Tian clan is located. However, it doesn't matter whether it is or not. The Undying Prince said indifferently. In the next moment, the peak of the late-stage god realm had reached the level of a half-step imperial emperor. No matter if it's the Tian clan or you, Tianyang, there's only one ending today. I'll destroy all of you. In the next moment, the Undying Prince's figure disappeared. The elders of the Undying Emperor Palace quickly retreated. This battle was between the Undying Prince and Tianyang. No one else was allowed to interfere. You're a bit slow. Tianyang smiled as he punched his right fist in a tricky direction. Boom! The two enormous forces collided as the two fists collided. Both of them were pushed back several steps. Then, the great void sword embryo that Tianyang threw in front of him rose into the air and turned into a flying sword, slashing towards the Undying Prince. That's all. The Undying Prince said indifferently, and the Undying Divine Fire exploded. In the next moment, a palm print was thrown out from the Immortal Prince's hand. Immortal Great Mystery Palm. This was the second of the Undying Heavenly Lord's 3 indestructible moves. The Undying Divine Flame burned fiercely, releasing a monstrous divine power. He sent the Great Void sword embryo flying. At the same time, he disappeared from where he stood. Tianyang smiled and reached out with his right hand. The Great Void sword embryo that had been sent flying by the Undying Prince landed in his hand. 3 indestructible forms? Tianyang smiled faintly, and with a kick of his feet, he shot toward the sky. Me too. 5 swords of the Empyrean. Unleashing the power of his bloodline, the boundless pitch-black flames fused with the true flames of destruction to form a terrifying sword light. Sword chi swept across 30,000 miles, freezing 19 continents with a single sword. Boom! Even though the Undying Prince had activated his movement skill and burst out with extreme speed, Tianyang could still easily see through him and hit him with his sword. However, the strange thing was that the Heavenly Lord's 5 sword strikes hit the Undying Prince's body, but did not leave a single mark. This sword strike was enough to flatten the entire sky capital peak. What a powerful spiritual soul. What a powerful physical body. The Undying Prince and Tianyang exclaimed at the same time. However, In the next moment, the two of them disappeared again. A murderous intent flashed across the undying prince's eyes. Although Tianyong's sword strike did not hurt him, the undying prince could see that. As long as Tianyong used a move stronger than this sword strike, it would be able to break his extremely tough physical body. His physical body had been tempered countless times by the flames of heaven and earth and nurtured by countless treasures. How could Tianyong use such a move? Well then, the warm-up is over. The undying prince threw out a punch. 3 indestructible moves, indestructible burning sky seal. After destroying Tianyong's sword strike, the undying prince said in a calm voice. Then, the surrounding undying divine fire burned wildly as if it could reach the heavens. The warm-up is over? That's great. Tianyong chuckled. The true flames of destruction and the undying divine fire turned into 2 fire dragons that intertwined and burned around him. Then, the heavenly sword in his soul, C, appeared on the great void sword embryo. Looking at the 2 people in the sky who had summoned their undying divine fire, the crowd could not help but gasp. Both of them were able to use the immortal divine flame. And why? They felt that Tianyong's undying divine fire was not much weaker than the undying prince's. Now take this. The undying prince snorted. His body disappeared and then reappeared in front of Tianyong, less than 10 feet away. At the same time, the undying prince's divine power, which was at the peak of the late-stage divine realm and only half a step away from the imperial emperor realm, exploded wildly. Supreme fist of the world. As he threw out a punch, it was as if a supreme, young divine king had appeared behind the undying prince. He chanted a mysterious divine incantation and wore a golden armor. When he threw out a punch, it suppressed the heavens and the earth. I am a supreme fist of the world. In the next moment, the young divine king's shadow attacked. This punch was not one of the many martial arts techniques passed down by the undying emperor court. Instead, it was created by the undying prince himself, a supreme fist technique exclusive to the undying prince. The young divine king's punch was not fast. It was just ordinary. However, it was clear that the undying prince's law of space was not the law of space. However, there was nothing left in the surrounding space. Everything was frozen. The world had become the stage for the undying prince's performance. When I throw out this punch, it will suppress the gods and demons, the undying prince said. Then, the punch exploded with extreme speed and blasted toward Tianyong. However, Tianyong, who was supposed to be frozen along with the surrounding space, suddenly grinned. Supreme fist of the world? I wonder how your supreme fist of the world compares to my emperor fist? In the next moment, endless battle intent appeared in Tianyong's eyes. The strongest of the Archean 9 emperors, the true intent of the firmament battle emperor, appeared on his body. Compared to the undying prince's supreme fist, this punch was obviously stronger in terms of momentum. Although the supreme fist of the world had a few seconds to accumulate momentum, this punch was still able to catch up. This was a supreme emperor technique. What is this? The undying prince's face suddenly changed. This was the first time the undying prince's expression had changed since the start of the battle. However, the undying prince did not slow down. Balls of undying divine fire burned on the supreme fist of the world. He raised the power of this punch to the extreme. A punch was thrown. Tianyong's punch was also condensed to the extreme. His eyes were like flames, burning with battle intent. Boom! Emperor Battle of the 8 Baron. Chapter 1753. Supreme Fist. War of the Emperors. The young divine king roared into the sky, unleashing boundless divine might. Tianyong's eyes burned with fighting spirit as he unleashed his emperor technique to meet the attack head-on. Boom! The fists of the 2 men collided fiercely. A shockwave visible to the naked eye appeared at the center of the collision between the 2 fists. Then, with a terrifying speed, it swept out in all directions. The group of undying Emperor Palace elders' faces changed slightly as they felt an indescribable feeling. Meanwhile, Emperor Wild Tiger's face changed drastically after a brief moment of shock. Boom! The space within 100 miles shattered inch by inch. The sky above Sky Capital Peak had completely turned into a place where spatial turbulence wreaked havoc. In fact, the spatial fragments had even turned into spatial storms. Even a Saint Realm expert might not be able to survive in the spatial storms. He blocked it. The Undying Prince's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Tianyong, who had collided with him. His supreme fist was blocked by a cultivator who was only at the peak of the early stage martial god realm. Boom! There was another loud bang. The two of them retreated at the same time as their right arms exploded. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Even with their tough bodies, they could not withstand the impact of the two fists, and their right arms were shattered. However, in the blink of an eye, the undying divine flame burned, and the right arm reappeared. You've cultivated the immortal blood to such a level? The Undying Prince looked at Tianyong, who had completed the blood rebirth at the same time as him, and his face changed slightly. He had received the most orthodox inheritance and cultivated it countless times before he could master the blood rebirth technique. How could someone with a bloodline density of the Undying Emperor Palace catch up to him? Wait, your bloodline density has increased? The Undying Prince then noticed something strange about Tianyong's body. Boom! However, Tianyong did not give the Undying Prince a chance to talk nonsense. He unleashed the Heavenly Expanse secret technique and appeared in front of the Undying Prince in a breath's time. Then he threw out another punch. Boundless divine power was released, and the Undying Prince reacted quickly and hurriedly blocked the attack. However, although Tianyong's punch was not as powerful as the previous War of the Emperors, it was not much weaker. The Undying Prince was sent flying by the punch. Sure, the Undying Prince snorted coldly. Since you insist on dying, don't blame me. In the next moment, a strange divine power fluctuation was released from the Undying Prince's body. The world around him shook slightly. At this moment, the raging spatial turbulence and spatial storm suddenly stopped. The power of the world, the Undying Prince roared. Everything within 80,000 miles was under the Undying Prince's control. In an instant, the Undying Prince seemed to have become the only ruler within a radius of 80,000 miles. Taking a step forward, it was as if he was stepping on an invisible staircase. Step by step, he walked up to the sky above the sun. This is the world Yu's world. Your strength is not bad. However, you're just a little bit away from opening up your own small world. If we were to fight again in a few decades, you might be able to defeat me, the Undying Prince said. In the next moment, every corner of the Undying Prince's world turned into the source of the black flames. The endless undying divine fire rushed toward Tianyong. You're not bad either. At this moment, Tianyong smirked. But you're just a little short. That's it. You're weaker than me. Boom! Endless chaotic divine power erupted from Tianyong's body. In an instant, all the undying divine fire around him was extinguished by the chaotic divine power. Stubborn boom! The power of the world within 100,000 miles exploded. In an instant, the power of the world within 80,000 miles of the Undying Prince's world was completely suppressed by Tianyong. The great void sword embryo in Tianyong's hand shone with 9 colors of Xinguang. Martial soul talent, sky-devouring secret technique. The power of the world around him, including the Undying Prince's power of the world, was forcibly swallowed by the sky-devouring secret technique into Tianyong's body. In an instant, Tianyong's cultivation rose from the peak of the early stage of the God Realm to the peak of the late stage of the God Realm. Now who's stronger? Tianyong chuckled and disappeared at this moment. Then he slashed out with his sword. Green Lotus Sword Principle. Green Lotus Sword Song. Green Lotus blooms from the earth. In the blink of an eye, green lotuses of swords emerged from every corner of the world. It was the same as when the Undying Prince summoned the undying divine fire in his world. However, Tianyong's green lotus blooms from the earth. It was even stronger than the Undying Prince's undying divine fire. Boom! Boom! The undying prince was sent flying by the green lotus blooms from the earth. This time, countless sword lights finally injured the undying prince's body. Streams of blood spurted out, and the undying prince also spat out a mouthful of blood. However, at this moment, the undying prince snorted coldly. Under his control, a powerful power of the world turned into a sharp blade and slashed around fiercely. Boom! Tianyang's chaotic small world could not withstand the attack of the undying prince's world blade. A huge crack appeared on it. Then, the undying prince's body flashed, and he left Tianyang's chaotic small world's range of control. Seeing this, Tianyang's eyes flashed. The undying prince's strength was indeed strong. In order to prevent the undying prince from forcibly tearing the chaotic small world's void boundary, Tianyang had deliberately strengthened it. However, the undying prince's strength and reaction speed were still beyond Tianyang's expectations. He was only enveloped by the power of the small world for a few seconds before he made a prompt decision to break Tianyang's world barrier with all his strength. However, since he was an opponent that Tianyang regarded so highly, Tianyang naturally would not underestimate the undying prince. Even if the undying prince really exceeded his expectations and successfully broke through the chaotic small world's void boundary. Boom! Chaos, Heaven Splitter. A sword light that looked like the beginning of heaven and earth slashed fiercely at the undying prince, who had just broken through Tianyang's chaotic small world. This was Tianyang's strongest move aside from the heaven realm, the Heaven Splitter sword technique. What? The undying prince had just broken through the world barrier when he was instantly enveloped by the terrifying sword light. Instantly, his expression changed drastically. He could not even maintain his previous aloof indifference. He roared with all his might and released all his divine power. Boom! 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 Countless undying divine flames were condensed by the undying prince and blasted toward the Heaven Splitter sword technique. However, it was useless. Boom! In the end, the sword slashed open the undying prince's body and split him into two. Blood spurted out wildly. Seeing that, everyone was completely astonished. At that moment, an extremely gloomy and cold voice sounded. I have to admit, under the burning of the undying divine flames, the undying prince's body continued to recover. His eyes flashed with violent killing intent. You've angered me. Chapter 1754. You've angered me. His body was sliced in half by the heaven-opening sword art. Even the undying divine flame needed more than 10 seconds to recover. When the undying prince said that his body was still bleeding profusely. Now, you're qualified to know my name. The undying divine flame spun beneath the undying prince's feet, forming a ring of fire. The undying prince's divine energy also burst out at this moment. Below them, the experts from the undying Emperor City and even the entire divine world who had rushed over were all dumbfounded by what they saw. Why did they feel that? From the beginning, the undying prince and Tianyang were fighting. The undying prince was at a disadvantage. Previously, the undying prince was sliced in half by a sudden slash. They knew that the undying divine body of the undying Emperor Court was extremely powerful. If one cultivated it to a terrifying level, they might not die even if their divine soul was shattered. However, Tianyang was still alive and well. He did not suffer any serious injuries. On the other hand, the undying prince was at a disadvantage and even had his body sliced in half. Wasn't this gap a little too big? However, after hearing the undying prince's words, the elders of the undying Emperor Court trembled. Prince, you're going to get serious. Wild Tiger Emperor said. Very few people in the divine world knew the undying prince's name. The world only knew the undying prince's name, but they did not know his real name. My name is Etion. I'm Qian Etion. The undying prince said slowly. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. The undying prince's aura surged crazily. It was as if he had unlocked some kind of seal. At this moment, the undying prince's cultivation had surpassed the half-step emperor realm. He was infinitely close to the emperor realm. What? Seeing this, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. Seeing this, his heart skipped a beat. The undying prince hadn't even used his full strength before. Previously, Endless Flame only managed to force me to release this seal at the very last moment. The undying prince said coldly. Around him, a powerful aura was released. At this moment, the surrounding space turbulence seemed to have been wiped out by some powerful force. The name is the seal of His Highness, the Crown Prince. Emperor Wild Tiger said respectfully. Before this, he had only addressed the undying prince as prince. After the undying prince revealed his real name, he directly leveled up and became the Lord Prince. Those who chant my true name shall see eternal life in the cycle of reincarnation. The undying prince said calmly. The undying divine flames in his hand turned into a long sword. Just by existing in this world, it caused waves of spatial fluctuations. This space could no longer withstand the power of the sword of divine fire. Hiss! Seeing this, countless people below sucked in a breath of cold air, and their expressions changed drastically. Previously, when Tianyang had cut the undying prince's body in half, they had thought that the undying prince was in a desperate situation. But now, the undying prince's cultivation had been sealed. Was at his full strength just now? The undying prince held the sword of divine fire in his hand and stood proudly in the void. A powerful aura that was infinitely close to that of an emperor was released from the undying prince's body. You're stronger than Yin Wujin, much stronger, the undying prince said. Hearing this, the people below were shocked. The undying prince had admitted Tianyang's strength? Who was Yin Wujin? He was the strongest genius of the previous generation in the divine world. At that time, his ruling power was not much weaker than the undying prince's. Tianyang was stronger than Yin Wujin. Therefore, it's worth it for me to use my strongest emperor weapon. The undying prince said slowly, and the aura on his body became stronger. The surrounding space gradually froze. Tianyang's expression changed slightly. At this moment, the undying prince stretched out his right hand, and the sword of divine fire burned with a ball of black flames. Then, an extremely powerful aura was released from the sword of divine fire. From top to bottom, it was 7 feet and 7 inches in total, revealing the pitch-black body of the sword. This sword has the power to seize the heavens. It's called the Sky Plunderer's Sword, the undying prince said. In the next moment, the powerful divine energy that he had accumulated gathered like a storm. The surrounding heaven and earth also trembled slightly. Next, it's my strongest attack. Wild Tiger Emperor's face was filled with excitement. Could it be that the Emperor has already mastered that Emperor technique? That's a supreme killing technique created by the previous generation's ultimate god with all his might, as expected of the strongest heaven's pride in the deity realm. Wild Tiger Emperor shouted excitedly. At this moment, the undying prince's divine energy had already sealed Tianyang. Although the undying prince's world energy was not as strong as Tianyang's, after the seal was removed, the same amount of world energy was much stronger. Tianyang could not move at all. Emperor technique, universal destruction technique. The undying prince snorted and slashed down with his sword. The space within a radius of 80,000 miles bloomed with endless silver light. It was as if a mountain had collapsed. Countless spaces collapsed with Tianyang as the center. The surrounding space turbulence was controlled by the undying prince. The Sky Plunderer's sword also slashed out endless divine fire. This was the undying prince's supreme emperor technique. The undying emperor's previous supreme god had created the pinnacle of the space divine law, universal destruction technique. Even Tianyang did not expect that the undying prince's divine law was not the undying emperor's traditional undying divine law, but the space divine law. At this moment, the endless space completely collapsed. The tearing force from the entire world ruthlessly acted on Tianyang's body. In an instant, Tianyang's body disappeared as if he had been killed by the emperor technique. Even the undying prince's divine soul could not sense Tianyang's aura. At this moment, the undying prince's face darkened slightly. A deep murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Whether Tianyong was dead or not, he would not let him go so easily. Even if he died, the undying prince wanted to see Tianyong die at the very last moment. The Sky Plunderer's sword burned with flames once again. His body flashed as he charged into the countless collapsed spaces. The undying prince would never give his opponent a chance to counterattack. The last sword. The endless space flashed with silver light. The undying prince's expression was cold as he slashed out with his sword. At this moment, a hand reached out from the place where the endless silver light had collapsed. "Hello." Tianyong's voice came from within. The undying prince's expression changed slightly as he slashed down with his sword. All the divine power in his body exploded. However, at the moment when he slashed down, a strange fluctuation swept past. The undying divine fire, the Emperor's divine power, and the space divine law all disappeared. The collapsed space around Tianyong also disappeared in an instant, leaving behind only endless chaos. Facing the undying prince, Tianyong smiled and opened his arms. "Welcome to my divine realm." Chapter 1755. Welcome to my deity realm. Tianyong tilted his head and chuckled. In the next moment, the endless chaos around him expanded rapidly and swallowed the undying prince. Boom! At this moment, even the undying prince's power of the realm was destroyed by the endless chaos. There was no reason to speak of. They were completely erased, replaced. It turned the surrounding heaven and earth into a world of chaos. How is this possible?" The undying prince said hoarsely as he looked at Tianyong, who was unscathed. Not even his robes were damaged. How is this possible? He even felt that the majestic divine power in his body was rapidly disintegrating. The undying prince, who had everything under his control and was extremely calm from the beginning to the end, was extremely confident when he executed his final move. Now he was terrified. "What have you done?" The undying prince roared. His divine power had disappeared. If he had used such a powerful move from the beginning, he would not have needed to drag the battle out for so long. He could have finished off the undying prince in one go. "Thank you, Emperor Songwu. If he had not shown me how to use the chaotic divine law, I would not have been able to think of this move." Tianyong smiled as he walked past the undying prince. He did not attack immediately. The undying prince's divine power had been sealed by Tianyong. Even if he was left with an unparalleled physical strength, he would not be able to defeat Tianyong. The outcome of the battle was completely determined. The chaotic divine law is the divine law that separated heaven and earth. It is the origin of all things and the beginning of all Taos. Before this, I only used it to simulate various mysteries. Now it seems that what I did was ridiculous. The chaotic divine law is the origin of all Taos. Why would I use the chaotic divine law to simulate other people's techniques? Tianyong sighed. He was born with terminated meridians, and his talent in martial art cultivation was almost negative. However, he had lived 2 lives, and his understanding of martial arts was extremely strong. Even so, he needed Emperor Songwu's final reminder to understand. Even for a martial arts genius like Tianyong, he was still far from being able to comprehend the current chaos divine law out of nothing. Fortunately, he had Emperor Songwu, who was only a step away from becoming an ultimate god and had already mastered the way of the ultimate god. Heavenly Sun was the one who had created the strongest killing move in the world. Chaotic divine realm. "What have you done?" The undying prince's expression suddenly changed when he realized that he was losing control of his divine power bit by bit. What kind of method did Tianyong use? Chaotic divine law. Tianyong said, "In my divine realm, my words are the heavenly Tao. My will is the will of the heavens." Of course, you can also call it an enhanced version of the heaven realm. Tianyong said with a smile. "Heaven realm, what is that?" The undying prince was the emperor's prince, an existence that was close to an imperial emperor, especially an existence that had gone through untold hardships to unseal his divine power. Once he lost his divine power, it was equivalent to losing his greatest support. The Undying Prince was now at his weakest. At this time, any random deity realm cultivator could possibly kill him. Now, you are in my chaotic divine realm. And I said, prohibit divine power. In here, except for me, everyone's divine power will be extinguished. Tianyang said. At this moment, the endless primal chaos around them became a little transparent. However, this little bit of transparency quickly disappeared. The Undying Prince's eyes narrowed when he heard this. How was this possible? Only an ultimate god can cast a spell with one's words. How can you cast a spell with your words? The Undying Prince roared. At the same time, he used all his strength to try to activate his divine power. How could someone at the peak of the early stage of the divine realm execute such a powerful move? Tianyang shrugged when he heard this. Maybe it's because of the guidance of an ultimate god. The chaotic divine law was the primordial law of all Taoists. Chaos was the origin of all laws and the end of all things. Everything was born from chaos. If it was stronger, it would not be an exaggeration to call it the heavenly Tao. For example, if Tianyang's chaotic small world continued to develop, it would not be impossible for it to create another heavenly Tao. The chaotic divine realm was the ultimate embodiment of all the power in the chaotic small world. It represented Tianyang's strongest attack. The area was very small, only 10 feet around Tianyang. However, in the chaotic divine realm, the original world had been replaced. Tianyang was the heavenly Tao here. Fortunately, you attacked me directly with your sword. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to drag you in. Tianyang smiled. After the battle with the Firmament Battle Emperor, Tianyang did not think that the Undying Prince would be able to get close to him so easily. Tianyang risked being killed by the Universal Space slaying technique and finally succeeded. You have calculated it? The Undying Prince asked with difficulty. It was as if Tianyang had planned this from the beginning. From the beginning to the end, he was just a pawn in Tianyang's chess game. Of course, there's still a huge flaw in this world. Even if it's my divine Tao laws, I still have to bear a huge burden in order to maintain it. Therefore, my chaotic divine realm can't be maintained for long. As soon as he finished speaking, the endless chaos around him suddenly disappeared. The immortal prince immediately took hold of the opportunity and uttered a furious roar. The monstrous, undying flame turned into the most terrifying attack and charged toward Tianyang. Time stopped, Tianyang said. In an instant, a distorted wave spread out to 100 feet around him. The Undying Prince was completely frozen by the time stop. Tianyang did not hesitate anymore. With a wave of his right hand, the Heavenly Sword and the Great Void Sword embryo merged and released endless 9-colored Xingguang. Chaos, heaven splitting. In an instant, Tianyang's speed reached the limit. His body was only a phantom, and at this moment, countless sword lights were slashed out. The Undying Prince, on the other hand, maintained his final pose in the frozen time and space. Streaks of chaotic divine law condensed to the extreme. Tianyang withdrew his sword, turned around, and said softly. The Heavenly Sword on the Great Void Sword embryo also returned to Tianyang's spirit sea. Time begins to flow. Boom! The Undying Prince behind Tianyang was directly cut into countless pieces by the surging chaotic divine law and sword lights. Blood spurted out, and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The Undying Prince's face was frozen in disbelief. He was directly defeated by Tianyang's chaotic divine law. Chapter 1756. Tianyang smiled. The Undying Prince behind him scattered like cherry blossoms, flying in all directions. Even so, the Undying Prince did not die. With a roar, he ignited countless undying divine flames. With his immortal divine body, even if he was severely injured, there was still a chance for him to come back to life. What he was most furious about now was that Tianyang had actually injured him to this extent twice. You've used up all your tricks. Space-time freeze is very strong, right? Now, you can't use it anymore. The Undying Prince had lost his mind in his rage and roared crazily. The flesh and blood that flew in all directions also flew toward the center. If the reconstruction was successful with the undying prince's bloodline density, even if he could not recover to his peak state, he could still maintain more than half of his combat strength. It would be a piece of cake to deal with Tianyang, who had used up all his tricks and was about to lose his peak late-stage deity cultivation. "You've used up all your tricks?" Hearing this, Tianyang shook his head and snapped his fingers. "Emperor Tsongwu, let me borrow your divine flames." Boom! Golden flames suddenly burned on the undying prince's flesh and blood. Countless golden flames blossomed in the sky like meteors, illuminating the sky. At this moment, the undying prince was horrified to find that his control over his other bodies was weakening. The flesh and blood that were gathering together suddenly disappeared. Under the burning of the golden flames, the flesh and blood seemed to have lost all vitality and fell rapidly from the sky. "No! How is this possible? Your bloodline density is so low. How can you suppress my undying divine flames?" At this moment, the undying prince's undying divine flames were also suppressed by the golden undying divine flames. It was completely extinguished. "Of course, my undying divine flames can't suppress you. But hundreds of millions of years ago, the last undying emperor of the Tian clan, is it enough?" Tianyang smiled. "You mean Songwu? How can you have Emperor Songwu's inheritance?" The undying prince's divine soul trembled as he roared. From the beginning of the battle until now, it was the first time he truly felt death. Tianyang did not continue to reply. The group of undying emperor's elders below also reacted. They roared and directly rushed up without caring about the fairness of the battle. The undying prince must not die. However, before those undying Emperor Hall's elders could reach Heavenly Yang chuckled softly. Explode. Countless golden flames intersected, merged, and finally exploded. Boom! In the sky, the most dazzling of the undying prince. "Your Highness, Emperor Tsongwu's emperor." At the same time, Emperor Tsongwu's undying emperor's emperor. Apart from the first two monarchs who weren't in the undying imperial court, all the monarchs in the undying imperial court made their move. Tianyang's mouth twitched. Die Prince Song Prince's not Die Prince fall. However, he didn't seem to have thought about it. "Princes how? Run. The Heaven's Expanse Shrine can withstand it." At the same time, the Heaven's Expanse Holy Spirit, who had been hiding in the Heaven's Expanse Shrine, rushed out and blocked Tianyang's side. A majestic shrine appeared in front of Tianyang. A boundless force burst out from it. Boom! Boom! Emperor Tsongwu and the other two emperors attacked at the same time. 3 attacks landed on the Heaven's Expanse Shrine. In an instant, countless cracks appeared on the Heaven's Expanse Shrine, which had not been damaged since it was refined. Facing the attacks of the 3 emperors, even the Heaven's Expanse Shrine could not withstand it. "Run!" The Heaven's Expanse Holy Spirit shouted. However, Tianyang waved his hand. The Heaven's Expanse Shrine, including the Heaven's Expanse Holy Spirit, were forcefully pulled into the chaotic small world by Tianyang. "The Heaven's Expanse Shrine is finished. You're finished too. Do you think I don't know?" Tianyang's lips curled up as he looked at the 3 great emperors and the countless elders behind them who were floating in the air. Tianyang knew that he could no longer maintain the heaven-devouring secret technique. He could fall back to the peak of early-stage God stage at any time. Originally, when he was at the peak of late-stage God stage, he might not be able to escape from the immortal empire even if he used the Heaven's Expanse secret technique. Now that he could fall back at any time, he naturally would not let the Heaven's Expanse Holy Spirit die. However, Tianyang did not expect the Heaven's Expanse Holy Spirit to suddenly appear. This guy can even kill the immortal emperor's son. Doesn't he have a backup plan? Below, Yichun gritted his teeth as he looked at Tianyang, who was facing the countless powerhouses of the immortal empire alone in the sky. He wanted to make a move, but he knew that he would not be able to withstand a single blow from any of the 3 emperors. He would only be courting death if he went up. Countless powerhouses of the immortal empire raised their heads and looked at Tianyang in the sky. Their hearts were filled with shock. A God-stage cultivator who was unknown a few years ago was now fighting with the number one genius of the divine world in front of countless powerhouses. In the end, he won the battle. However, he still had to face so many powerhouses of the immortal empire alone. Even if these immortal Emperor City experts hadn't even seen the heavenly sun face 3 days ago, it didn't stop them from feeling an incomparable reverence for the heavenly sun face. Emperor Wild Tiger, Emperor Zhang Lang, one more emperor, and who knows how many God-stage cultivators. Tianyang looked around and smiled. The Undying Emperor Hall is really giving me face. Cut the crap. Emperor Wild Tiger glared at Tianyang and attacked immediately. How dare you kill the Emperor's son? Today you will die. Under Emperor Wild Tiger's lead, endless divine energy attacked Tianyang fiercely. Within 3 feet, only I can break the sword domain. Tianyang roared and slashed out with the great void sword embryo in his hand. Countless sword lights slashed out and streaks of dazzling sword chi continuously slashed at the incoming attacks. In an instant, Tianyang even managed to destroy a portion of the attacks. However, under the attacks of the 3 great imperial emperors, Tianyang was still unable to withstand and was directly blasted flying. Blood spurted out from his mouth, and he wanted to escape. However, Emperor Wild Tiger's expression was cold as he sealed the space around him. Trying to escape? Emperor Wild Tiger grabbed at Tianyang and pulled him over. Your fate is to have your soul extracted by me and burned by the divine flames for countless years until your soul disappears. Emperor Wild Tiger said coldly. Tianyang gritted his teeth and prepared to forcefully sublimate his martial soul, while his martial soul's power was weak. At this moment, a supreme aura appeared in the depths of the immortal empire. In an instant, it destroyed all the attacks and froze everyone in the air. Supreme God. Chapter 1757. Hierarch. Regardless of the cultivation level of the people present, before this terrifying pressure, they were instantly turned into powerless mortals. They were directly suppressed. Tianyang, who was being bombarded by the attacks of the Undying Emperor Court, took advantage of this opportunity to catch his breath. However, Tianyang's expression still changed. Even existences at the level of the 3 great imperial monarchs were easily crushed by this pressure. This was the power of a hierarch. Even though he didn't know how far away this aura was, it was still so powerful. Tianyang even felt that his primal chaos divine domain, which he thought was invincible, didn't even have the chance to be used in front of this hierarch's aura. Even when Emperor Tsongwu appeared during the battle with the snow goddess, Tianyang didn't feel as invincible as he did now. It was unfathomably powerful. Lord Hierarch. At this moment, the elders of the Undying Emperor Court had completely given up on attacking Tianyang. They retracted their divine energy and knelt down respectfully towards the depths of the Undying Emperor Court. The person who made this move was the Emperor of the Undying Emperor Court, one of the strongest supremes in the divine world. When the Emperor of the Undying Emperor Court appeared, no matter how powerful the 3 emperors were, they had to kneel down. It wasn't a requirement, but a natural fear of the strong. Even though there was only a difference of 1 realm between a hierarch and an emperor, the difference was like heaven and earth. The difference between the two was like the difference between clouds and mud. It was indescribable. A hierarch was a god at the peak of the sky dome. An emperor was at most immortal on the ground. Below them, the expressions of the Undying Emperor City's experts changed drastically. Some knelt down, some bowed. In an instant, only Tianyang was left standing on Sky Capital Peak. What are you doing? At this moment, Emperor Huang, who noticed Tianyang's actions, and roared, You dare not kneel in front of a hierarch? As for Heavenly Sun, he completely ignored Emperor Wild Tiger. In his eyes, Emperor Wild Tiger was just SOSO and was not a threat at all. If he hadn't exhausted himself in the battle with the Undying Emperor Court, Tianyang was confident that he wouldn't lose to Emperor Huang, who in a one-on-one battle. However, the one who appeared was a hierarch. Tianyang was in a strange state. It wasn't an epiphany, but it was extremely similar. His body was like a sponge, crazily absorbing the boundless mysteries of a hierarch. In Tianyang's eyes, it wasn't just a hierarch's, it was a true hierarch's boundless treasure. Boom! At this moment, Tianyang see of the Emperor Court. In the next moment, Tianyang spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying without warning. You're a mere ant. Hierarch! Hierarch! At this moment, his origin was heavily injured. Just like when he fought with the undying Emperor Court, Tianyang was only at the peak of the Heaven Great Sage realm. His origin was also heavily injured, and he couldn't even use blood rebirth. However, that was when a Saint Realm expert fought against a Deity Realm expert. Now, whether it was a Deity Realm expert or a hierarch, they were all using Hierarch's divine power. This hierarch had heavily injured Tianyang's origin with just a sentence. Hierarch made a move. Emperor Wild Tiger and the others, who were kneeling on the ground, were stunned when they saw Heavenly Sun suddenly vomiting blood and retreating. Hierarch was usually high and mighty and didn't involve himself in the affairs of the mortal world. Why did he make a move today without any explanation? At this moment, the undying Emperor Court's old voice sounded. Sinner Tianyang killed the Emperor Court's prince, created chaos in the undying Emperor Court, and destroyed the dignity of the undying Emperor Court. Simple, indifferent, and unquestionable. At this moment, boundless death energy swept towards Tianyang and enveloped Tianyang. The terrifying death energy crazily attacked Tianyang's body. Even Tianyang's primal chaos divine domain couldn't block the hierarch's absolute command. That's right, that sentence was the undying Emperor Court's order. Once the order was given, the heavenly Tao changed. Tianyang was sentenced to death. Then, Tianyang would die without a doubt. Boom! Streaks of golden, undying fire burned, and the death energy around Tianyang was expelled by the undying fire. The expressions of Emperor Wild Tiger and the other emperors changed slightly when they saw this. What kind of fire was that? It could block the undying Emperor Court's absolute command. Undying fire? The old voice was surprised, but then he sneered again. This undying fire has already reached the hierarch realm. I don't think it's yours. How long can a mere strand of hierarch flame last? Then, the terrifying death energy fiercely attacked again. However, Tianyang gritted his teeth, and streaks of undying bloodline flames burned all over his body. The golden flames that were about to be extinguished also expanded greatly at this moment, pushing away the streams of death energy. Poof, boom! The undying Emperor Court's absolute command snorted coldly, and the death energy instantly broke through the golden undying fire's restriction. It bombarded Tianyang's body. Tianyang spat out a mouthful of blood. His origin had already been damaged by the hierarch's absolute command, and now he was hit by the death energy again. At this moment, the undying fire on Tianyang's body was completely extinguished, and his body was surrounded by death energy. Emperor Huang Hu and the others couldn't help but take in a cold breath. Tianyang, who had blocked them for so long, had been reduced to such a state in just a second. The power of a hierarch was terrifying. Now, I'll send you to hell. The undying Emperor Court's absolute command snorted coldly, and a palm print condensed in midair. In the next moment, the palm print fiercely bombarded Tianyang's body. Boom! Tianyang's body was completely destroyed. Because his origin was damaged, even his undying bloodline couldn't exert any power. Only his divine soul was left, and it was sent flying. Even this divine soul couldn't resist at all. It was burned by the undying fire. As expected of the hierarch, Emperor Huang Hu looked at the scene in front of him in shock. Tianyang was finally dead. However, Monarch Wild Tiger's face was filled with resentment. Even if Tianyang died, their undying prince wouldn't be able to come back to life. The undying prince was a peerless genius that only appeared once in 10 million years, and he died just like that. Boom! There was another loud bang. The undying fire on Tianyang's body burned crazily. Streaks of undying divine flames exploded, dyeing the entire sky black. Chapter 1758. The battle between Tianyang and the undying prince lasted for almost 2 days. The battle started early in the morning and ended on the night of the second day. He went to Tiandu Peak alone to fight the undying prince. He killed the undying prince with an absolute advantage. In the end, the undying emperor's men suddenly attacked, but they could not do anything to Tianyang. In the end, it was the undying emperor's master, a supreme, godly, venerable rank existence, who killed Tianyang, although the final result was still the undying emperor's victory. However, the death of Tianyang and the undying prince was enough to leave an indelible mark in the hearts of the cultivators in the heavenly realm. You're really dead? Yi Chun changed his face again. He gritted his teeth as he watched the countless arrest warrants of Tianyang in the undying emperor city, killing the undying prince, shocking the undying emperor, and even forcing the undying emperor's master, a godly, venerable rank existence, to attack. This kind of result was glorious enough. Even if Yi Chun had imagined it to be more than 10 times, it would still be difficult to achieve this. That was the undying prince. Even if Yi Chun was extremely confident in his talent, he would not dare to say that he could exchange a single blow with someone of that level. The number one in the heavenly realm, dominating the world, was not a joke. The death of the undying prince was equivalent to the removal of the biggest threat to the Tian clan in the future. As for Tianyang, he was just a prodigy who came out of nowhere and had nothing to do with the Tian clan in the heavenly realm. In theory, Yi Chun had profited greatly this time. However, Yi Chun gritted his teeth. In his heart, he even had the urge to kill the undying emperor and directly attack the undying emperor's master. If only the strongest person in the Tian clan was a godly venerable rank. With a godly venerable rank, Tianyang wouldn't have died. Yi Chun's figure flashed and disappeared from the undying emperor city. Even if Tianyang was dead, there was no reason for the undying emperor city to be locked down. After all, Yi Chun had entered the undying emperor's city with Tianyang. If Qian Zhongyuan revealed something, he would be in danger. Haoman. Boom. Great Elder Haoman could not control the true essence in his body and directly exploded. 4 days ago, when the Heavens Expanse Saint Spirit had left with the Heavens Expanse Shrine, Grand Elder Haoman had already known about it. However, there was no further news, so Haoman did not continue to pay attention to it. Now, the news had arrived. To Haoman, this was incomparably bad news. Tianyang managed to kill the undying prince, but he was killed by the undying Emperor Palace's ruler, a god. Along the way, an Emperor artifact appeared and blocked a few attacks for Tianyang, but it disappeared in the end. Grand Elder Haoman naturally knew what this monarch artifact was. Heaven's Expanse Shrine. Second Elder. First Elder Haoman stood there for more than an hour before he roared angrily. Great Elder. Soon, the second Elder of Haoman appeared in front of the Great Elder. Seal the news immediately. Don't let anyone know. We only need to pay attention to the Lingfeng realm and the South Central Hundred Territories. We don't know what happened in the north. First Elder Haoman gritted his teeth and said, Tianyang was gone, and only Haoman was left. Haoman had already been severely injured once because of Tianyang's departure. It was not easy for him to recover. He could not let Tianyang's efforts go to waste. Yes, second Elder Haoman said. On the side, Gu Qing, who was Haoman's guardian, also stood there motionless. Archaic Jiang family. Tianyang is dead? Tianyang is dead? Ha 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 ha. Because of Tianyang, Jiang Xian's power had expanded and his own power had been suppressed. At this moment, the eldest young master of the Jiang family was in a state of ecstasy. Even though he had never met Tianyang, the eldest young master of the Jiang family hated Tianyang to the bone. It was because this person was most likely the important reason for the destruction of the snow goddess's bloodline. Therefore, the Jiang family patriarch valued the daughter who was close to Tianyang so much. The position of the Jiang family patriarch had never allowed a woman to interfere. However, because of this, The resources that were originally monopolized by him were all shared with Jiang Xian. In fact, Jiang Xian could even freely enter and exit the hidden scripture pavilion. She was even stronger than him. It would not be long before Jiang Xian could break through to the godly realm, and there would be even fewer elders supporting him. But now, everything was over. Tianyang was dead, and the relationship that Jiang Xian built with Tianyang would also collapse. The position of the Jiang family patriarch will always be mine. Ha ha ha! The battle between Tianyang and the Undying Prince had spread throughout the divine world. No one knew who Tianyang was, but almost all of the younger generation in the divine world knew the name of the Undying Prince. The Undying Emperor was a genius that appeared once in a million years. He had 9 dragons with 9 lines of supreme divine bloodline. He had sealed his cultivation for more than 100 years, and he was still able to step into the peak of late-stage godly realm at the age of 300. He was only one step away from becoming an imperial emperor. Ever since he was born, he had always been unstoppable and counterattacked. He had never been defeated. Yesterday was the only time he had been defeated. Also, it was his last defeat. The Undying Prince had fallen. Tianyang, who killed him, was also completely wiped out because of the supreme god's intervention. 3 imperial emperors and more than 100 godly realm experts attacked together, but they still could not do anything to Tianyang. Only a supreme god could truly kill Tianyang. Such a battle record was enough to make a godly realm expert laugh in the underworld. I saw Tianyang disappear, but are you sure he's really dead? In the Undying Emperor's city, the white-robed young man frowned and asked, "Young lord, he was attacked by a supreme god for so long. He's already at the limit of a godly realm expert." After that, the Undying Emperor was enraged. How could he let Tianyang continue to live? The messenger said. However, the white-robed young man snorted when he heard this. Ask Heaven's Secrets has never relied on inference to confirm information. Moreover, if Tianyang is really, then there's no way he's dead. The white-robed young man spoke so softly that even the late-stage godly realm expert opposite him couldn't hear him clearly. All right then. If that's the case, Ask Heaven's Secrets will fall behind in terms of information. It doesn't matter. The white-robed young man pulled his hat and turned to leave. I believe he won't die. Then, an ethereal voice that didn't seem to belong to this world sounded. The calamity is coming, and he's the only one left. Maybe he's the last one. Cough, cough, cough. On a barren black land, a broken young man coughed a few times. His face was abnormally pale. Around him, a strange grayish-black aura surged, giving people an uncomfortable feeling. Then, Tianyang opened his eyes. Chapter 1759. Where's this place? Tianyang gritted his teeth and tried to sit up. However, the excruciating pain from his limbs almost caused Tianyang to collapse. The supreme god's aura was still flowing in his body, but it was no longer life-threatening. However, Tianyang was still very confused. Why was he able to survive? Tianyang didn't think that he had any special ability to block the final attack of the Undying Emperor Palace Lord. If that attack hadn't landed on his body, it would have been impossible for him to block it. Not only the Undying Emperor's city, but the entire imperial court realm and even half of the 1,000 territories in the north would have been destroyed. Could it be the Tsang Emperor's sword? Startled, Heavenly Sun hurriedly dived deep into his soul ocean. However, before he could check on the Tsang Emperor's sword, a middle-aged man's voice appeared in his mind. Long time no see, Junior from the immemorial ancient era. Instantly, Tianyang's body stiffened and his muscles tensed up. He was ready for battle. What are you afraid of? Then, the undying divine fire gathered in front of Tianyang and formed a translucent figure. He was about 2 meters tall and had a handsome face. However, compared to the Undying Emperor's inhuman handsomeness, he was still lacking. He wore a fitting black robe and had a gentle expression. He looked like an ordinary young man. However, Tianyang only took one look and immediately sensed the aura of the person in front of him. It was the undying divine fire that formed the body. Even the undying emperors, Emperor Songwu's, and the undying emperor's undying divine fire couldn't compare to it. If the heavens and earth perish, I will not perish. If the sun and moon decay, I will not perish. The black-robed young man smiled faintly. Do you still remember this? You are. Tianyang's eyes narrowed. This was the foundation of the undying divine body, the undying will. This person had actually mentioned the undying will in one go. It should be known that those who possess the immortal bloodline would have to endure immense pressure to say these words, unless they had truly comprehended the immortal will. Tianyang had never seen this person before. Could he be from the Tian clan that Yichen was from? Was he the one who helped him? Forget it. I can't be bothered to keep you in suspense. I don't have much time anyway. The man smiled and waved his right hand. Tianyang's remnant, godly, venerable power disappeared in an instant. My name is Tian Xian. Of course, you should be more familiar with my other title. Undying Heavenly Sovereign, the black-robed youth said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Tianyang, who had been calm all this while, fell into a complete daze. Undying, Celestial Lord? The immortal bloodline, progenitor of the immemorial era? An existence at the level of an immemorial emperor? This should be the last time I attack. If I continue to attack, even the old man Song Tian's Song Emperor Sword will not be able to provide me with energy. However, the way that Song Heavenly Emperor Sword is chosen this time is somewhat special. The undying Heavenly Sovereign said with a smile. Heavenly Son, on the other hand, was completely dazed by the sudden influx of information. Even after hearing these two sentences, he was unable to react for a moment. Unlike the Green Lotus Sword Immortal, I did not kill myself. Or rather, the way I killed myself is different from his. Right now, I'm living in the immortal will of every immortal bloodline. The undying Heavenly Sovereign said with a smile. You mastered the immortal will when you were in the ascending heaven stage. Therefore, I was able to help you when you were killed by the demon. However, I could only recover after consuming the power of the Song Heavenly Emperor's Sword. The attack earlier consumed a huge amount of power from the Emperor's Sword. Only then was I able to protect you and send you to this place. Therefore, I can no longer help you from now on. With that, the undying Heavenly Sovereign's body, formed by the immortal divine fire, gradually turned transparent. Seeing this, Tianyang's eyes narrowed. He did not care about the huge amount of information he had just asked and quickly asked. Why did you save me? Tianyang did not think that the undying Heavenly Sovereign would help him repeatedly because his surname was Tian. If that was the case, Emperor Songwu would not have died. Why? The immortal Heavenly Lord repeated himself, then smiled faintly. Because you are the one chosen by the Song Heavenly Emperor Sword. At the same time, you have the shard of the Fortune Sword in your hand. Even if your talent is not as good as the other chosen ones, I believe that you can end all of this. What? Hearing this, Tianyang was stunned. Chosen by the Song Heavenly Emperor Sword? Holding the shard of the Fortune Sword? He could understand the former, but what about the latter? How could he have the Fortune Sword in his hand? Of course, it's most likely for the sake of this world. Then, the undying Heavenly Sovereign's body dimmed completely. Don't worry, I'm just out of energy. I won't die before he dies. As for you, you have to be careful in this place. If it wasn't because I had no other choice, I wouldn't have sent you here. I've already given you what you wanted. Now it's all up to you. The undying Heavenly Sovereign smiled. Then, his body disappeared completely, leaving behind a vague sentence. Remember, go and ask Tianji. The undying Heavenly Sovereign's aura disappeared completely. Tianyang, on the other hand, was stunned on the spot. Looking at the place where the undying Heavenly Sovereign used to be, he felt a little lost. He entered the Sea of Soul and sensed that the Song Heavenly Emperor's sword's tip had dimmed. What I wanted. Then, Tianyang closed his eyes and sensed it. Suddenly, he was shocked beyond words. Cultivation, peak of the God realm advanced stage. His spiritual energy had also reached this level. His physical body was the same. His essence, chi, and spirit had all reached the level closest to the Emperor realm. Of course, what shocked Tianyang the most was not the increase in his cultivation, but countless inheritances of the undying Emperor dynasty appeared in his mind, inexhaustible. This is the inheritance that Emperor Tsang wanted me to find. Suddenly, Tianyang felt that it was unreal. He had worked so hard for so long and was almost killed. How could these things be delivered to him so easily? However, Tianyang did not immediately sit down to adapt and refine the new cultivation and inheritance. Instead, he released his spiritual energy to check his surroundings. Then, his expression became a little strange. A grayish-black airflow flowed around Tianyang's broken body. Below his feet was the pitch-black earth, and above his head was the dark sky. The mountains were scarlet red, and the setting sun was like blood. This is the demonic world. Chapter 1760. This is the demonic realm. Tianyang was shocked as he sensed the surrounding environment. The surrounding demonic aura was surging, and the sky was dark. Even the demonic star that Tianyang had been to might not be comparable to this environment. The concentration of demonic aura here was equivalent to the concentration of heaven and earth's spiritual chi in the divine realm. I've been beaten to the demonic realm. Tianyang was shocked. He thought that he had been beaten to some other great world. He didn't expect to come directly to the demonic realm. Since I'm in the demonic realm, I can't use Su Tianxiao's face. Tianyang muttered to himself. He didn't plan to change his appearance and walked around with his original appearance. The people that Tianyang had offended were all from the human clan, the demon clan, and the demonic clan that he had offended were all killed. However, Su Tianxiao's face had seen many demonic clans on the demonic star, and it didn't kill all of them. Tianyang's original appearance was safer. But Tianyang let out a sigh of relief when he didn't find any living beings with his divine soul power. It would be bad if he was thrown into some dangerous place. Then, Tianyang sat cross-legged on the ground and circulated his divine power to recover his body as soon as possible and comprehend the immortal imperial court's inheritance in his mind. However, as soon as he circulated his divine power, Tianyang felt a piercing pain. His dantian was broken, and his meridians were almost destroyed. If it wasn't for the chaotic divine law, Tianyang's body wouldn't have survived. As an ultimate god, the immortal heavenly lord had cut himself off from the primordial age until now. He probably couldn't completely block the immortal imperial court's attack. Then let's comprehend the immortal imperial court's inheritance first. Tianyang circulated his divine power and ignited the immortal divine flame. Not only his dantian and meridians, but even Tianyang's immortal bloodline was broken. Fortunately, the immortal chaotic body had surpassed the immortal bloodline and the immortal divine body. It was built on the immortal divine body, but belonged to Tianyang. It was the strongest divine body. Strands of chaotic chi was injected into the immortal divine flame. Suddenly, the immortal divine flame shone brightly and enveloped Tianyang's entire body. Tianyang's body quickly recovered. Tianyang's mind was immersed in comprehending the immortal imperial court's inheritance. The 3 styles immortal styles, the complete version. This is the strongest immortal imperial court's cultivation technique. It's profound. It's immortal imperial court cultivation, immortal imperial court's immortal bloodline. Immortal heavenly immortal 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 realm. 2. Immortals. Immortal immortal emperors immortal immortals earth immortal 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 s immortal immortal emperor. And the immortal heavenly lord's method was even more brilliant. He directly entered Tianyang's soul sea. But now, Tianyang could only decipher less than a tenth of it. How to condense the source, how to control the divine Tao laws. No wonder the undying Emperor Court is still one of the strongest powers in the divine world, no matter how weak it is. This complete inheritance is a treasure that all cultivators would rather die for. Tianyang sighed. Ordinary cultivators would have to tread carefully in the fog before taking a step forward. from the Tao flame to the divine realm, one would fall into a bottomless abyss if they weren't careful. This inheritance was equivalent to unveiling the fog. It told you that you could break through to the divine realm by doing so. Of course, it still required talent and cultivation to support it. But if it was made public, the entire divine world's martial civilization would rise by more than a level. However, it wouldn't benefit the immortal imperial court. After sighing, Tianyong no longer hesitated and immersed himself in comprehending the immortal imperial court's inheritance. Tianyong started from the connecting heaven realm, and he had broken through to the divine realm. Fortunately, Tianyong had innately terminated meridians. As long as he found the right direction from the start, no matter how he cultivated, he wouldn't go astray. At most, he would go berserk in a small area. Thus, it was only a matter of strength. If it was a matter of right or wrong, it would be impossible to cultivate from the start. Although Tianyong's Tao foundation was stable and perfect, the details were still a little rough. The immortal imperial court's inheritance just so happened to make up for this flaw in Tianyong. The emperor of the immortal imperial court and the three emperors would never have thought that after fighting so hard against Tianyong, they wouldn't die and the immortal imperial court's prince would be dead, and their most precious inheritance would be given away to someone else. If Tianyong was the emperor of the immortal imperial court, he would have the heart to commit suicide right now. After cultivating for a few days, Tianyong had to stop because of his injuries. However, Tianyong had also benefited greatly from the past few days of cultivation. His cultivation had also climbed back to the peak. However, the divine sovereign's power in my body has been removed, but a part of my divine soul seems to be suppressed. Tianyong frowned. He could feel that his divine sovereign's power was at the peak of the late stage of the immortal imperial court, and he could step into the imperial emperor realm at any time. It was completely under his control. However, Tianyong couldn't completely unleash it. This was because the power left behind by the emperor of the immortal imperial court in Tianyong's divine soul hadn't been completely removed. It was as if there was a huge crack in Tianyong's divine soul sea. As a result, the power that Tianyong could unleash now was about the same as before. However, with the increase in divine strength, this chaotic small world should have expanded a lot. Tianyong muttered to himself. When he had just broken through to the immortal realm, the chaotic small world had already reached 100,000 miles. Now, it had been directly channeled to the peak of the late stage of the immortal imperial court, and was only a step away from the peak of the immortal imperial court. This chaotic small world should also be much stronger. Out! With a thought from Tianyong, the primal chaos godly law emitted streaks of primal chaos light. In an instant, the extremely majestic world power erupted from Tianyong's body. Boom! In just an instant, it expanded to a radius of 100,000 miles. However, Tianyong's expression didn't change, and the chaotic divine law continued to operate. 100,000 miles might be the limit for him at the early stage of the immortal realm. But now it was far from enough. However, the surroundings are filled with demonic chi, so I can only use the heavenly sword to expand it. Tianyong muttered to himself. The demonic world was filled with demonic chi, and the chaotic small world couldn't directly absorb the heaven and earth spiritual chi to the current limit like in the immortal realm. It could only be refined by himself and the heavenly sword, and then injected into the chaotic small world. Therefore, the expansion speed was much slower. 110,000 miles, 120,000 miles, 130,000 miles, 150,000 miles. As time passed, the chaotic small world's area had more than doubled compared to before. However, this was still not the limit. Tianyong's expression didn't change, and the heavenly sword's refinement had reached the limit. Boom! 200,000 miles. 200,000 miles, the chaotic small world. It had already exceeded the size of the northern wilderness region, and even the firmament territory had to admit defeat to it. It seems that this is the limit. Tianyong muttered to himself as he looked at the 200,000 miles of chaotic small world. The current chaotic small world's world power had reached an extremely terrifying level. Then, just as Tianyang was about to withdraw the heavenly sword, a cold shout suddenly sounded. Who? Who is cultivating in my tribe's sacred ground? Chapter 1761. Who dares to cultivate in my clan's hallowed grounds? A furious shout resounded, and then a gale blew down from the sky. After that, a young man fell down from a huge demonic beast and landed heavily in front of Tianyang. Bang! Dust and sand were kicked up into the air. Hallowed grounds. Tianyang's eyes narrowed as he quickly captured the words, and his expression changed slightly. This place isn't a no man's land, but the hallowed grounds of the demon race? Oomph. The area of 500,000 kilometers around Ocean of Cloud City is the territory of my Cloud Ocean sect. Who doesn't know that this is the hallowed grounds of my Cloud Ocean sect? The young man grunted coldly, and then the huge demonic beast he rode on descended slowly. It was an extremely huge demonic dragon. It wasn't really appropriate to call it a demonic dragon, because its limbs weren't very similar to those of the dragon race. There was a pair of pitch-black dragon wings on its back, and they seemed like they were burning with flames. As for its head, it was slightly different from what Tianyang knew about the dragon race. It was longer and more rugged. However, he looked similar to Dragon Emperor Xietian in his original form in the Xientian macro world. That's the dragon race of the demon dimension? Tianyang muttered to himself. Meanwhile, the young man's face fell when he saw Tianyang remain silent for a long time. Who are you? Why are you in the hallowed grounds of my Cloud Ocean sect? The young man shouted furiously, and then numerous strands of demonic energy rose up from him. An aura comparable to a peak demigod from the god dimension was released. I'm the eldest disciple of the Cloud Ocean sect, Su Qin. If you don't answer me, then don't blame me for attacking. The young man spoke coldly. As for Tianyang, he turned his attention from the demonic dragon to the young man. His overall appearance was exactly the same as a human's, and it was even to the extent that there was some evil energy that belonged to the demon race. It made the young man's appearance seem especially attractive. His cultivation was extremely ordinary, and it was only at the peak of the demigod realm. Of course, to the demon race, he was probably at the peak of the half-step demon god realm. Tianyang had some understanding of the demon race's Tao of cultivation. Starting from Demon Sovereign, it was followed by Demon Sovereign, Demon Saint, Demon Sect, Demon Saint Sect, Half-Step Demon God, Demon Monarch. They corresponded to Wu Zun, Saint Realm, Great Sage, Holy Emperor, Demigod, Immortal Realm, and Imperial Emperor. Tianyang sensed that this youth was not very old, but he had already reached the peak of the half-step Demon God realm. In the Devil realm, he could be considered a decent genius. You bastard! Seeing that Tianyang was sizing him up unscrupulously, the young man was instantly enraged and charged forward. Thick demonic aura erupted from the young man's body. In the next moment, it condensed on his fist. With unparalleled ferocity, he directly punched out. Devil-penetrating light, killing fist. Dazzling demonic light erupted from the young man's body and fused with the demonic chi that erupted from his fist. In an instant, his aura skyrocketed, and the power behind his punch actually surpassed what Tianyang had expected from a peak demigod. However, although he was a little surprised, Tianyang did not take this punch seriously. To say that he was strong, he was only strong in the demigod realm. In front of a divine realm expert, he was still trash. Bang! Tianyang directly attacked, activating the Illusion Demon Ancient Book. In an instant, the divine power released was simulated into demonic chi. He grabbed hold of the young man's fist and suppressed all the power of the punch. Is this the attitude that a half-step demon god should have toward a demon god? Tianyang's face was cold, and the demonic chi of the demon god realm surrounded him as he said indifferently. This indifference seemed to be filled with endless killing intent. In an instant, the surrounding temperature dropped by a lot. The law of the jungle in the devil realm was even worse than in the divine realm. The gap in strength almost determined everything. This Yin Hai sect disciple called Su Qin was, in fact, only a peak half-step demon god. In front of Tianyang's demon god realm, he was a weakling. His status was naturally very low. Demon god? Feeling this aura, Su Qin suddenly trembled. He looked in disbelief at Tianyang, who might be younger than him. He was so young, but he was already a demon god. Wasn't this a little too frightening? However, although Su Qin sighed in his heart, his expression instantly changed to one of respect. I don't know why Lord Demon God has come to the holy land of the Yunhai sect. This holy land is of great significance to the Yunhai sect. If you rashly disturb us, I'm afraid that the Yunhai sect will not let you go, Su Qin said. Hearing this, Tianyang coldly smiled. A majestic demonic chi burst out. Although the illusion demon ancient book in Tianyang's hand was only at the level of Wu Zun, Tianyang's soul power and the primal chaos divine law made Tianyang's imitation extremely exquisite. Unless it was a demon emperor, or even a demon emperor at the level of snow goddess, it was possible to see through Tianyang's disguise. Tianyang didn't think that there was such a demon emperor in the Yunhai sect. Is this your attitude when talking to a demon god? Tianyang's face was filled with evil intent. At the same time, the surrounding space also changed slightly. It distorted rapidly and squeezed down towards Su Qin. Suddenly, Su Qin's expression changed greatly. Although the demon race was generally capricious, they would still restrain themselves when dealing with their own kind. As a result, this demon god just exchanged a few words and was about to attack. Wait. Lord Demon God, wait. Su Qin hurriedly said, even if you don't know the Yunhai sect, you should have heard of the name of Demon King Yunhai. This holy land is prepared for the upcoming Demon King Yunhai, Su Qin hurriedly said. His voice was so fast that it was a little unclear. After all, standing in front of him was a demon god full of killing intent and a cruel temperament. If his explanation was a step too late, he was afraid that he would be squeezed by the surrounding distorted space and explode. Demon King Yunhai? Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth curled up. If it's that Demon King Yunhai, I can spare your life. Tianyang sneered. In the demon world, Tianyang didn't know much. However, this Demon King Yunhai happened to be one of them. They besieged the heavens expanse Emperor Lord together, causing him to have no choice but to split the Heaven's Expanse Temple and turn it into the main culprit. One of the 5 demon emperors. Tianyang waved his hand, and the space that was squeezing towards Su Qin instantly returned to its original state. Bang! Su Qin's body heavily smashed onto the ground, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Tianyang's cold voice followed. When Su Qin heard this, his expression suddenly changed. Bring me to see your Demon King Yunhai. Chapter 1762. Take me to see your Demon King Yunhai. Tianyang said coldly, and demonic energy raged around him. Hearing this, Su Qin's face changed. This demon god, after invading the holy land of the Yunhai sect, still dared to say that he wants to see their Demon King Yunhai. Could it be that he was seeking death? Tianyang's face remained unchanged, but the demonic energy around him raged even more. If it was in the divine world, Tianyang might have explained a few words, saying that he was old friends with Demon King Yunhai. But this is the demon world, the law of the jungle, the strong preying on the weak. The demon world has been interpreted to the extreme. If Su Qin dares to say no, then what Su Qin will face is endless death. Demon King Yunhai should still be in the sect. Su Qin trembled all over and stood up shakily. However, he had some confidence in his heart. Although the realm gap was too huge, Su Qin could only feel that the other party was a demon god from the pressure of the huge divine Tao. However, there are also strong and weak demon gods. Looking at the situation of the person in front of him, he was obviously not a powerful demon god. At most, he was an early-stage demon god. Facing Demon King Yunhai, there was only one word, death. Then lead the way, Tianyang said coldly. Su Qin also supported his body, which had suffered heavy injuries due to the space compression. He rose into the air and landed on the back of the demon dragon. Roar! The demon dragon roared, spread its wings, and rose into the air. Sitting on it, Su Qin's heart was full of resentment. When it was time to meet demon monarch Cloud Sea, it will be the death of this arrogant demon god of unknown origin. The demon world was the same as the divine world. It was the largest fragment of the ancient continent that was shattered into the myriad worlds due to the great war of the gods and demons. Its area was not inferior to the divine world. However, unlike the divine world, there was only one race in the demon world: the demon race. All other races, including the human race, monster race, dragon race, and ghost race, were just vassals of the demon race in the demon world. As for the devil world, it didn't have the divine world's myriad realms. It only had a central devil land and the surrounding 4 devil nations. Each devil kingdom was larger than the 1,000 territories in the north controlled by the undying imperial court. Moreover, each devil kingdom had countless powers fighting against each other. But in the end, there was only one supreme sovereign. The 4 great devil kingdoms were the 4 great emperors, but in the central demon land, there were more than just emperors. Legend had it that the demon ancestor, who had led the demon race to become the overlord of all races in ancient times, had yet to fall. He was guarding the central demon land and protecting the unification of the demon world. This was what Tianyang concluded from the information recorded in the Inheritance of the Heavens Expand Shrine in the Undying Emperor's Palace. The 4 devil kingdoms were located in the north, south, east, and west respectively. In the center was the devil lands that were twice the size of the devil kingdoms. After experiencing so many worlds, Tianyang naturally saw the strength of the demon realm at a glance. In the divine world, there were countless forces fighting for themselves. There was basically no communication or alliance. However, in the devil world, there were connections between devil nations and devil nations and devil lands. With such development, it was naturally faster than the divine world. After all, once they joined forces, it wasn't as simple as 1 + 1 = 2, but a multifold increase in strength. No wonder the demon race has the ability to go on an expedition every 10,000 years. Such a magnificent martial art civilization can definitely support such a huge expedition. Tianyang muttered to himself in his heart. A few strands of worry flashed across his heart. If the devil world went all out to attack the divine world, would the divine world, which was fighting for itself, be able to withstand it? Moreover, Tianyang knew that most of the immemorial emperors had killed themselves, and there were no traces of them in the divine world. As for the devil world, it was said that there was still the immemorial demon ancestor. However, the distance between the devil world and the divine world is extremely far, and I was forced here by the supreme god. It's useless to worry about this. Tianyang sighed in his heart and didn't continue to think about it. With his current cultivation, not to mention whether he could find the way back, even if he could, it would take him at least a year to return to the divine world. Before that, he had to establish a firm foothold in the demon world. Tianyang also learned about the location of the Yunhai sect through Su Qin's mouth. Coincidentally, it was in the central demon land in the north. It wasn't far from the legendary demon ancestor's heavenly demon pillar. Tianyang already had a plan. After dealing with Demon King Yunhai of the Yunhai sect, he would go to the heavenly demon pillar to take a look. At this time, the space around Tianyang changed slightly, and there were some spatial fluctuations. Su Qin, who was riding the demon dragon, also spoke at this moment. Just now, we were in the holy land of the Yunhai sect, but now we have officially entered the demon world. This time, Demon King Yunhai seems to have come for some treasure in the Holy Land. So he came to this small Yunhai sect with the identity of the Demon King. Su Qin said. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. In the Holy Land, apart from the Blood Red Mountain Range and the Dark Land, there was only demonic chi. What kind of treasure was hidden? However, Su Qin only said this sentence and then closed his mouth. Seeing the slight change in Tianyang's expression, Su Qin sneered in his heart. It's good that you're interested. If you're interested, you'll have a conflict with Demon King Yunhai. In front of Demon King Yunhai, you can't even block for a moment. You'll die without a doubt. At this time, Su Qin, who thought that he had framed Cheng Gong, suddenly changed his expression. Tianyang had already sensed a powerful aura from afar, and his expression changed slightly. This aura was stronger than the aura left by the Heaven's Expanse Emperor in the Heaven's Expanse Shrine, but it was weaker than the Snow Goddess. However, it was obvious that it was in the Emperor realm. In other words, it was a demon king. Amo Chi cultivator had appeared in the vicinity of the Yunhai sect. His identity was obvious. It seems that we've bumped into Demon King Yunhai on his way to the Holy Land. Su Qin now saw the face of the owner of the powerful aura clearly, and he was pleasantly surprised. Demon God, didn't you say that you wanted to discuss the treasure of the Holy Land with Demon King Yunhai? The Demon King in front is Demon King Yunhai. Su Qin hurriedly turned his head and said to Tianyang, who had been flying beside him. However, when he turned his head, he didn't see Tianyang's figure, which made Su Qin a little surprised. At this time, a clear voice sounded. "You're Demon King Yunhai?" Hearing this, Demon King Yunhai, who was flying quickly, was stunned. There was actually someone in the Yunhai sect who dared to call him by his name. Then, Demon King Yunhai saw Tianyang's face clearly. It was completely unfamiliar. Back then, I joined forces with the other 4 Demon Kings to kill the Heaven's Expanse Emperor. Why is it that after so many years, you're still the same as the Heaven's Expanse Emperor? The corner of Tianyang's mouth curled up as he mocked. You, hearing this, Demon King Yunhai's face instantly darkened. Do you know, at this time, a sword light that contained the chaos divine law fell from the sky. In an instant, Demon King Yunhai's body was split into 2 by this sword light. Demon blood splattered everywhere. Chapter 1763. The sword light slashed down like a star. In just an instant, the sword light sliced Demon Monarch Cloud Sea into 2 halves from top to bottom with an unstoppable force. Demon blood splattered everywhere. At this moment, there were 2 demons. One was Su Qin, the eldest disciple of Yunhai sect who saw Demon King Yunhai being cut in half. The other was the main character who was cut in half, Demon King Yunhai. How dare you! Even though he was cut in half, Demon King Yunhai did not suffer much damage. Instead, he roared in anger. The surrounding heaven and earth were occupied by the terrifying demonic aura. What followed was Cloud Sea Demon Monarch's furious roar. Ash Cloud Sea Seal. The demonic chi condensed and followed a strange trajectory to form a complicated seal. It released a billowing murderous aura and shot towards Tianyang at lightning speed. Not to mention Demon King Yunhai's anger for being cut in half. Tianyang's mockery of the Heaven's Expanse Emperor was enough to make Demon King Yunhai furious. In that battle, he, a noble demon, was no match for the lowly human emperor who was like an ant in his eyes. He even had to call for 4 helpers to kill the Heaven's Expanse Emperor. Even though he won in the end, Demon King Yunhai did not see it as glory. Instead, he saw it as a great humiliation. So many years had passed, and he had almost forgotten about it. However, now that it was brought up again, Demon King Yunhai's anger was ignited. Die! Demon King Yunhai roared and formed another seal with his hands. In just a few seconds, the Tsangyun Sea transformation seal was condensed again. One after the other, the 2 overlapped and instantly exploded with a stronger power than before. However, Tianyang's expression did not change. He waved his right hand, and the great void sword embryo appeared in his hand. He slashed with it easily. Even Tianyang could not unleash the full power of a late-stage god because of the remnant power of the undead emperor in his soul sea. However, it was enough to deal with the Demon King. Heaven-opening sword technique, Tianyang said calmly as his chaos divine power exploded to the maximum. The great void sword embryo released a chaotic sword that looked like the beginning of the world. Even if the 2 seals of the Ash Cloud Sea transforming seal were superimposed, their might far exceeded that of a single seal. However, they were still unable to block the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword. Crushing, that was crushing. When Tianyang was at the peak of the early-stage god realm, he could rely on the 50,000-kilometer chaos small world to fight with an imperial emperor. Moreover, Tianyang's cultivation had reached the peak of the late stage of the god realm, and his chaotic small world had expanded to a radius of 200,000 miles. Any one of them would be able to beat up Demon Monarch Cloud C. Not to mention, the heaven-opening sword technique was a fusion of the two. Boom! The dazzling sword light shone in all directions. In front of the heaven-opening sword art, the Ash Cloud C transforming seal was completely unable to resist at all and was directly destroyed. Even Demon Monarch Cloud C was sliced into countless pieces by the sword. Spiritual C. However, at this moment, Demon Monarch Cloud C let out a furious roar. Countless pieces of his body turned into the purest demonic chi at this moment, forming a sea of demonic chi in midair. Clearly, Tianyang did not expect Demon Monarch Cloud C to have such a technique. The heaven-opening sword technique did not have time to change its form and directly pierce through the sea of demonic chi. Although close to one-third of the demonic chi in the sea of demonic chi was sliced into nothingness, it was still a far cry from the instant kill that Tianyang had expected. This is the technique that made Demon Monarch Cloud C famous, transforming his body into a sea of demonic chi. When Su Qin saw this, he immediately waved his fist excitedly, completely forgetting that Demon Monarch Cloud C was being beaten up by Tianyang. There's something. Tianyang looked at the sea of demonic chi that Demon Monarch Cloud C had turned into and said in surprise. The techniques of the demon race were indeed a little strange. In the realm of the gods, Tianyang had never seen anyone who could completely transform their body into divine power. Who exactly are you? In the sea of demonic chi, Demon Monarch Cloud C's resentful voice suddenly rang out. He was on his way to his own sect's sacred ground to obtain treasures, but halfway through, a completely unknown person suddenly appeared. After ridiculing him, he crippled him? Who did he offend? Tianyang had just opened his mouth when he thought for a while and said, Undying Emperor's son. The Undying Emperor's son had just turned into ashes, so he should not have the time to find trouble with him. Tianyang walked around in the demon realm, or rather, he was a tyrant. Of course, he had to give himself a famous name to take the blame for himself. His name was quite famous in the realm of the gods, but it clearly had not spread to the demon realm. Undying Emperor's son? Hearing this, not only did the sea of demonic chi that Demon Monarch Cloud C had turned and trembled violently, even Su Qin's expression changed greatly. Isn't that the genius of the Undying Emperor's son? He actually came to the demon realm? If I can kill the Undying Emperor's son, it will definitely be a huge blow to the realm of the gods. Su Qin was extremely excited. Then he instantly made up his mind and rode the demonic dragon under him towards Tianyang. If he could kill the Undying Emperor's son, this merit would be enough to let him get rid of his status as a disciple and directly become an important figure in the Yunhai sect. However, Tianyang snapped his fingers, and a wall of fire formed by the undying flame appeared in front of Su Qin. Su Qin crashed head-on into the undying divine flame. In an instant, he turned into ashes and disappeared. The Undying Emperor's son actually came to the demon realm. Demon Monarch Cloud C did not care that his eldest disciple had turned into ashes. Instead, he directly controlled his sea of demonic chi and charged towards Tianyang. The monstrous demonic chi was like a real endless sea, setting off layers of demonic chi waves. Boom! In an instant, Tianyang was swallowed up. However, at this moment, Tianyang's lips curled into a smile. The Undying Emperor's name is really useful. Come, eat to your heart's content. Then, a pure white long sword appeared in front of Tianyang. In the next moment, a devouring power that was enough to scare Demon Monarch Cloud C out of his wits erupted from the heavenly sword. Boom! In an instant, demon monarch Cloud C lost control of his demonic chi. Countless demonic chi was completely out of control and surged towards the heavenly sword. The heavenly sword released streaks of 9-color xinguang that quickly devoured demon monarch Cloud C's demonic chi. In Tianyang's senses, the heavenly sword's grade was also rapidly increasing. "What have you done?" Demon monarch Cloud C's tone changed as he roared crazily. The sea of demonic chi that his body had turned into also used all its strength to try and escape. However, the more the heavenly sword devoured, the stronger it became. The devouring power naturally became stronger as well. With demon monarch Cloud C's remaining demonic chi, there was no way he could escape from Tianyang's grasp. Boom! With a final loud sound, the heavenly sword directly devoured the last bit of demon monarch Cloud C's demonic chi. Tianyang also reached out with his hand. Streaks of true flames of destruction turned into a small bottle and stuffed demon monarch Cloud C into it. "Someone gave me such a big gift when I just arrived in the demon realm. The people of the demon realm are really hospitable." Looking at demon monarch Cloud C, who was madly struggling in the bottle of true flames of destruction, Tianyang laughed. Chapter 1764. What did you do? Within the small bottle formed by the true flames of destruction, demon monarch Cloud C roared madly. It had only been a few seconds. The demonic chi that he had cultivated for tens of millions of years had been completely devoured, leaving nothing behind. Originally, this move was the ultimate move that Devil Monarch Cloud C relied on to become famous. His body would transform into a sea of demonic aura, greatly reducing the effectiveness of the enemy's attacks. Furthermore, Devil Monarch Cloud C would enter a state where he could attack or retreat at will. It could be said that he was invincible. Who would have thought that they would meet a freak like the Undying Prince? Could it be that there's already a technique in the firmament that can devour demonic aura? Demon Monarch Cloud C seemed to have thought of something extremely terrifying as his voice began to tremble. If this was the case, it would be a huge blow to the devil world if all of the Undying Imperial Court cultivated this technique. What about the other 4 demon monarchs? Tianyang, on the other hand, completely ignored Demon Monarch Cloud C. He couldn't be bothered to change into the Undying Prince's face. It wouldn't take long for people to find out that he wasn't the Undying Prince. Before that, Tianyang naturally wanted to let Heavenly Firmament's sword eat its fill. Compared to sitting and cultivating and devouring the devil chi in the devil world, it was obviously faster to directly devour the devil chi of a powerhouse. Devil Monarch Cloud C's devil chi alone had caused the sky firmament's sword to faintly show signs of breaking through to mid-grade divine rank. If he could devour all of the demonic chi from the 4 demon monarchs who had besieged the heavens expanse monarch, the sky firmament sword might be able to break through to the high-grade divine rank. Tianyang had a feeling that if the sky firmament sword broke through to the ultimate god level, it might cause some strange phenomenon. The other 4 demon monarchs. Hearing this, Demon Monarch Cloud C's expression changed slightly. "You actually want to find them? Oof. Even if you have some strange method to devour our demonic chi, don't think that it will work on them. I'm the weakest among the 5 demon monarchs. If you meet someone like Taotai Demon Monarch, you'll definitely die." Demon Monarch Cloud C hooted, while Tianyang frowned slightly. The bottle formed by the true flames of destruction shrank a little. Ah! Although the true flames of destruction were still at the level of divine fire, the power that the true flames of destruction could unleash was not weak at all with the support of Tianyang's majestic divine power. Just roasting Devil Monarch Cloud C's soul was enough to cause him unbearable pain. "So much nonsense. Where are you?" Tianyang said coldly. He did not have the slightest favorable impression of the fiend race. In his previous life, Tianyang had killed most of the demon race's expeditionary forces. Similarly, it was the demon race's expeditionary army that had injured Tianyang the most. The hatred between the two was enough for Tianyang to treat the demons without any feelings. Demon Monarch Luo Yin is in the south of the central demonic land. Demon Monarch Tao Tai is around the heavenly demonic pillar, and the other two demon monarchs are elusive. I don't know where they are. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea roared, while Tianyang raised his eyebrows. Scattered? Looks like we won't be able to catch them all in one go. Forget it. Previously, the disciple of the Yunhai sect said that there was a secret treasure in the holy land of the Yunhai sect that was worth your attention. Tianyang raised his eyebrows, puzzled. Previously, he had used his divine sense to scan the holy land of the Yunhai sect. Other than the abundant demonic qi, there was nothing special about it. Moreover, because of the scarlet soil, not even a blade of grass grew. It was completely unsuitable to be a place for cultivation. Tianyang was somewhat puzzled as to why such a place was respected as a holy land of the Yunhai sect with a demon monarch. Could it be that there was a secret treasure hidden here? You want to take the boundary stone of the Yunhai sect? Hearing this, Demon Monarch Cloud Sea's face suddenly changed. His voice, which was originally filled with fear, suddenly became firm. The boundary stone of the Yunhai sect belongs to the demon race. Even if you're the strongest genius of the divine world and can defeat me, don't even think about touching it. The Cloud Sea boundary steel is an immemorial secret treasure. If someone who isn't a demon tries to touch it, they'll definitely suffer a backlash and die. Demon King Yun Hai said coldly. However, Tianyang did not take it to heart. With a flick of his finger, the small bottle formed by the true flames of destruction shrank again. Ah! The burning of the soul was not as painful as the physical pain. No matter how strong the physical pain was, it was only a physical stimulation. As for the burning of the soul, it was an intense pain that came from the depths of the soul. I don't have time for nonsense, Tianyang said indifferently. Against Demon Monarch Cloud Sea, Tianyang would not show any mercy. Tianyang was determined to kill Demon Lord Yunhai for the sake of the heavens' expanse Emperor, not to mention his hatred towards the demon clan. Right now, he was just trying to squeeze out the last bit of value before killing Cloud Sea Devil Monarch. I'll talk. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea gritted his teeth. He thought of the fate of those who touched the Cloud Sea boundary steel and could not wait to speak. The Cloud Sea boundary steel is below the holy land of the Cloud Sea sect. However, it requires a Demon King level demonic qi to open it. With your strength, I'm afraid you can't even get close to the Cloud Sea boundary steel, so the Demon King level demonic qi you want. Tianyang waved his hand, and the demonic qi that he had not had time to devour burst out. Even though Demon Monarch Cloud Sea had already surrendered to Tianyang, the demonic qi was still extremely violent and aggressive. However, under the suppression of the primal chaos godly law, this demonic qi could not make any waves. All right, Demon Monarch Cloud Sea was silent for a while, but he still spoke. Holy land of the Cloud Sea sect. Because Su Qin was killed by Tianyang's undying flame wall, the Cloud Sea sect still did not realize that their first disciple had fallen and that their supreme emperor had become a prisoner. Tianyang easily crossed the arrayed barrier that the Cloud Sea sect had set up for the Holy Land and arrived at the location of the Cloud Sea boundary steel that Demon Monarch Cloud Sea had mentioned. This is an immemorial relic? Tianyang looked at the array barrier in front of him that was filled with an immemorial relic and raised his eyebrows slightly. Could it be that the immemorial relic of the demon world was everywhere? This Cloud Sea boundary steel was not only an immemorial relic, but the array barrier around it was also an immemorial array barrier. It's because I found the Cloud Sea boundary steel here that I established the Cloud Sea sect here. It's just to protect the Holy Land and prevent the Cloud Sea boundary steel from being discovered by other demon kings. Demon Monarch Cloud Sea said. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly and looked at the Cloud Sea boundary steel in the translucent array barrier. It was pitch black and deep. Although it was separated by an array barrier, Tianyang could still feel the powerful aura on the Cloud Sea boundary steel. It was 3 feet long and wide, and was engraved with strange immemorial demonic runes. Before Tianyang made a move, He glanced at the immemorial demonic runes. In an instant, a terrifying divine soul attack erupted from the cloud sea boundary steel.